We're back. Good evening. Welcome to the Warrant Committee. Madam Secretary, would you please conduct the attendance of this evening?
I will. We have Dave, Emily, O'Henny, JJ, Steve Geister, Kristen, Tom, Lori, Allison, Jareem, Amanda, Judy, Steve Rhines, and Jay. Everyone's here.
Thank you. First on our order of business this evening, I'd received a special request from the town moderator, Mr. Bob Hiss, to speak to the Warrant Committee. So, Mr. Hiss, you are recognized.
See if those will stick put. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the invitation tonight. Hi, Warrant Committee members. I think I've spoken to a number of you over the last few days. You've had an interesting week. I think you know that in the 7 years that I've been in this role, I rarely appear before the Warrant Committee, and really only do so when a matter comes before the body that is pertinent to town meeting and its function, the moderator and its function, and any of the moderator-appointed committees. And after some numerous conversations with members and with Chair Humphreys, I thought this might be one of those moments. So when I spoke to many of you, it was pretty clear that a lot of you had endured a lot of stress over the last week. You know, and there's good stress. There's a lot of work right now. You got budgets, and you're all had professional careers. You probably all pulled one-nighters. Everybody understands that's part of the Warrant Committee job. There's good stress. But I also heard a lot of bad stress. So there were calls from elected officials, email inundation, texts to spouses, coalitions, turning out Warrant Committee attendance, but only when you don't vote their way, whoever that is. So I wanted to apologize that, on behalf of some officials that a small few of our fellow citizens and town meeting members and board members, I think, behaved badly. You signed up for the good stress, but you didn't really sign up for the bad stress. In fact, not only did you not, but neither did your predecessors. Perhaps a refresher of the purpose of the Warrant Committee is in order. So in their wisdom, our town predecessors created this brilliant idea of a small group of citizens who are not the political animals, attuned to every policy development of the day, but are instead the average citizen focused on their daily lives, who get a call from the moderator out of the blue, asking for a favor, to help their town out for about 3 years, digging into the warrant articles. And you all answered that call. You do so in a nonpartisan way by requesting presentations from elected boards, specialty committees, department heads, experts, etc. And the Warrant Committee was created by the legislative branch, town meeting, is appointed by the process leader of the legislative branch, the town moderator, and then reports their results back to the legislative branch, town meeting, for decisions. But it's not a policy-making board. It's a deliberative and research body set up by the town. It's also not meant to be a rubber stamp aligned with the interest of the submitted board. It's empowered to think for itself and come to its own conclusions. So again, due to the work of the volunteer citizens rather than the elected officials or political partisans. It's worked well for many decades because the Warrant Committee was largely left alone to do its work and do their best for town meeting. But it seems that in recent years, a new trend has emerged. Some of the same partisan activists we see operating the tactics at the federal and state level have turned its sights on local towns. You've seen it in the news. And they're using some of the same tactics, which puts kind of the bad kind of stress on the Warrant Committee and turns your focus from instead of doing the best job you can, you're now managing the stress in dealing with a barrage of emails and texts and calls and social media posts and in-person confrontation that we see on the news at the higher level of government. So in my view, my request out there is that this partisan activity really should and must stop for the good of the town. I mean, if it continues, then the only types of citizens who will sign up for the Warrant Committee are going to be the partisans, illuminated, by the fire of their righteousness, to go push their agenda of the day onto the people who think, to make people think the right way. So I saw some of this behavior emerge in my own election last year. To me, this is the exact opposite of diversity. Diversity to me is multidimensional, which includes precinct, sex, age, political orientation, ethnic background, skills, and experience. You all checked many of those boxes from a broad representation of the town. I thought you're all a terrific group of citizens volunteering again to answer that call for 3 years. So tonight I'm politely asking the partisans to stand down. I've seen the emails, I've heard the texts, I've spoken to the recipients of the phone calls, I've read the social media posts. I saw the names of the coalition leaders, the citizens, the town meeting members, and the elected officials who were calling you to put that pressure and calling on others to exert pressure on the Warrant Committee to get you to vote one way or another. I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to call people out, and if the pressure campaign ceases, I'll speak no more of it. Prior to our last town meeting in February, I received a request from some of our elected boards to speak for a need for decorum and civility. I gladly agreed to do so, and my remarks are a matter of record. So I'm making a second call for that same spirit of decorum and civility tonight, this time on behalf of you, the Warrant Committee of Milton. So thank you again, Warrant Committee members, for your service to our town. With that, I'll step away and leave you to your deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Hess.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you got it?
Oh, Henny, do I see that you have a hand up?
You do, Mr. Chair? If I might have 30 seconds?
You are recognized.
Thank you, sir. So with that, thank you, Mr. Hiss, for your comments. And so I wanted to just take the opportunity to particularly, in that spirit of decorum and civility, make sure everyone, we're not here last time, heard my apology again for my parts in driving the intensity at the last meeting. And I specifically wanted to apologize to Member Gagnon. I think, a comment that should not have been said was said, and I understand, I hope that was not received as hurtfully as it sounded, but I sincerely do apologize. I do hope that we all can move forward, as Mr. Hiss has laid out, with the kind of decorum and civility that will be necessary. Because it's just gonna be us and we have to do the job anyway. So we may as well have a better time doing it and not be worn out and stressed out. So thank you all very much for bearing with me again. And Member Gagnon, I hope you'll receive my apology.
Thank you, Henny. Okay. We're lucky tonight that our agenda basically is address the annual town meeting, specifically budget. It's time for us to really start looking at that and getting to the point where we can vote articles. Okay, where we're at right now, we have the budget, we have the warrant, we have a good draft, we're filling it in. But we're probably only something like 15% done. The big decisions with regards to budget haven't been made, so we're like 0% at budget. So this, I sent out an email on Friday, and I'm gonna ask for a lot of help from Jay tonight, because we sent out the spreadsheet of the budget to everyone with some suggestions of how to approach looking at that. One of the things that Jay did a great job of to help to put this into a form that we can hopefully follow. I'm not great at this stuff, but one way of looking at it, and I sort of ask you to consider starting to look at the budget this way, is we start with Nick's budget. Nick, the town administrator. He spent a lot of time working on his budget. He had his budget, and then there was a series of meetings with department heads revisions. He put a tremendous amount of work into it, and we have his budget. And it's a budget proposal, because it's up to the town at town meeting to approve it, and we make a recommendation. So a way to proceed here would be, let's start with next budget. So where do we focus on next budget? It looks like one of the interesting things that happened this year was that there was this, let's just call it $4 million of free cash. That's not the kind of thing you see every year. We took a big chunk of it, put that in stabilization, big chunk of it into capital improvements. And then let's just say that approximately 1 million, it's something on the order of 964,000 was his allocation to what we'll call the needs-based, so the supplemental requests. So what his budget basically is for funded items, it's something like, we start with level funding. And then he's taking something on the order of 964,000 out of the free cash, and then putting that into his proposed funded items, so that we would be funding needs-based. So one of the first questions that I would, ask is, what do we think about that? What do we think about those general allocations? Do we like the way that those are being distributed? And then, as we drill down, then we need to look at how, those are being allocated. So, Jay, do you think we could pull up that, was that tab H with the needs space that had it, that 964,000 broken down?
Yes. Yeah, if you want to see that?
Yes, please, thank you. Did everybody look at this?
Yes.
Start thinking about this?
Okay, how do I, what am I?
Did you get it? The email?
So could I just ask a question?
Sure.
Clarification? So they want to put $1 million into the stabilization fund of the 4. Is that what I'm reading?
$500,000, I believe.
Amy Dexter, do you want to,
Down.
okay, do you want to come up and help us out with this? Thank you. It's Amy Dexter.
And then they took it down.
It was
When they
$1 million,
spread
but
it.
it was
Sorry.
reduced through the joint finance meetings that we held between select board and school committee to $500,000, all into the general stabilization.
Could you say that again, please? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. So in Mr. Milano's original budget proposal, he had proposed taking $1 million of free cash and putting $750,000 in the general stabilization fund and $250,000 into the capital stabilization fund. We met what we refer to as the joint finance committee meetings, which are the school committee finance subcommittee and the select board finance subcommittee. And we worked to revise that down to $500,000 and use the difference for level service, not level service, sorry, needs-based items.
Steve?
So we have rainy days coming for sure, based on everything going on in this town. I don't know why when we have $4 million in surplus, we don't put half of that at least, 2 million or 3 million into the stabilization funds for future. We know it's coming. It's just like spend, and it's not a good solution for this town. We're gonna go bankrupt. If people are gonna not be able to pay taxes to the point that you're gonna keep upping them because you want this, want that. I think everybody needs to go in and dig a little deeper and say, okay, I don't really need that much, 100,000 here, 100,000 there, and we can put, 2 or 3 million into stabilization fund for future.
I'm just curious if,
Okay, yes. Allison?
just, are we to Steve's way, have we looked at the, like, what the economy and, like, as you guys are analyzing, really thought about future-wise in the next year to 2 years because of the inflation and items in other departments, has that been thoroughly thought, in regards to where that money might be needed in other departments due to what's going on with the economy?
Well, the proposed budget includes some inflation factors, especially in energy costs. So for '24, that's been taken into account. I think, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think at those sub-finance committee meetings, we've been very open that this proposal will more than likely result in the need for an operational override in '25.
Right.
This is sustaining services, so that we don't have a detrimental cut to services to our town residents across all departments.
And if I could just jump in my sense from the conversations that I had participated in with regards to budget discussions last year, going into this year, I this is not a ruling from the chair, this is open to other points of view, obviously. But it is my sense that if we didn't have this big free cash number that we have now, we would probably be talking about having an override now. And so, I think that is what I'm saying, is that I think at the Warrant Committee last year, we basically were saying, get ready for an override. So I'm not saying that to say, like, spend all the money, because we would have done an override anyway. I'm just saying that, but for this free cash, we probably would be talking about an override now. I think Amanda was first, then back to Steve.
So when we're talking about free cash, because some of this, it's just trying to wrap my head around things between like ARPA and free cash. And so free cash obviously varies from year to year. You can't count on any amount. And so when we increase, where I look at more like salaries or adding positions, we're adding them with money that isn't necessarily going to be there next year. So we're increasing the budget to a degree that then it's a one-time hit, that if that doesn't come in, now we're at this level of funding that we have to do next year, when I'm just concerned that sometimes the free cash, I get that it's free cash, but it's like a one-time influx of money that can do this. So, to Steve's point and Member Allison's point, I wonder about places where it's more a capital expense, things that aren't carrying costs moving forward, people. And I don't know how that gets considered in the mix. It's just something that I was thinking about, as well as, and we're not there yet, but similar with the ARPA funds, that they're one-time hits. And so I don't know how to think about that as you're planning a budget moving forward, because that $4 million probably won't be $4 million, or this influx won't be the same next year.
So an example, if I may.
Yes, Tom?
So an example, okay, from Public Works would be like traffic calming project, right, long-term, as opposed to a position.
Yeah, that's just the way I'm
It's
trying to
just-
think about it.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, because, right, to fund the operational budget for positions, then that is gonna expand, because those are, these are contracted positions, union, that, have a cost of living range so we're taking money we don't know is gonna be there and using it to expand a level funded budget for next year does not, to me, sound like very fiscally sound way to operate.
I guess Steve, then Lori.
Thank you. So I agree with Kristen, we have $4 million, so that means we did a bad job budgeting last year, because we got $4 million left over in the budget, okay? So we did a bad job budgeting, and so we're just gonna automatically throw it forward and go into a proposition override next year. I don't accept that. I think it's wrong. I think we should take all the $4 million and say, manage your budgets the way they are today, and put that into the rainy day fund, because it's for a rainy day, and we're gonna have some rainy days coming forward, trust me, especially with what's going on with the economy and you know, everything. So I just don't think it's right for us just to automatically say, okay, we have $4 million. And we were lucky the last couple of years, we had opera money, and we had money from Norfolk County, a lot of extra monies that were there, and we spent it all with the assumption that we would just continue on with these positions, and we can't afford them. So, sorry.
So, it's okay. Yes, Steve, so. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna take a little bit of issue with the characterization of bad job. Maybe we could say we
Well, that
didn't
was
do
part of
the
the job.
best job.
That's part of the job.
Right, but I think a lot of my understanding of what goes into this big free cash number was a lot of this was just not expected, and there were reasons why almost $1 million of it was almost a windfall. But I just like to say that. I think that the characterization, a lot of people were involved in the budget from last year.
Two.
Yes, okay. I think it was Lori who was next.
And I just would like to ask Amy if you want to comment on the free cash. I mean, you and I had a conversation, and there were a number of different situations. I don't know if you want to comment on
On what?
just the fact that it's such a large number this year. There were extenuating circumstances, so if you want to.
Yeah, so, of the 4 million, $1 million is definitely something that was held up by the Department of Revenue the year before, because, they were having difficulty tying out the numbers, it passing a reasonableness test, and they held it out of the prior year's number. Otherwise, the year before would have been 900,000 higher. I worked with them this year to clear that up, so that was a timing difference. It's $1 million of it. Another, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I believe, I can pull it up if you don't mind. I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm just trying to
Oh, no.
find it.
No, take your time.
So many.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
And this might be a misunderstanding, but some of the free cash is driven by things like building permits and increases in excise tax, correct? So all it would take is for someone to do a tear down and do a $2 million add of a house, and that drives unexpected cash flow into the town, as well as substantial car purchases as well. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, so basically, when we budget, we're really, you have to be somewhat conservative on your revenue estimates. And being in the midst of COVID, we weren't sure what the pandemic, what effect that was gonna have on our revenue streams, like meals taxes. We pretty much thought that was gonna be wiped out because businesses were shutting down and whatnot. And turn around, we collected more meals tax in '22 than we did ever before. So it was one of those things that, like, I wasn't completely involved in the '22 budget because I was on the school end in the development of the revenues, but what I've looked at since I came back was it looked like they followed that same method we've always done. We're in the midst of COVID, we don't know what the effect's gonna be. We better be conservative rather than go in large and not meet those estimates and then have this operational deficit. So, of the $4 million in free cash, $1.2 million of it was revenues in excess of what was estimated. Part of that was the new growth. That came in much higher. I don't remember the exact numbers, but maybe a couple $100,000 more than what was estimated. Motor vehicle excise taxes, 356,000 more. Again, couldn't buy cars, we weren't sure, are people going to be going out and buying cars? We better estimate low, cars get older, the excise tax comes down. And excise tax is really hard to predict because it's all over the place. So it's things like that in the revenue that I think they did a really good job estimating the revenues. Because $1.2 million in revenues, what is that? 1% of a $100 million budget? That is not far off. It seems like a windfall, but if that went the other way, we'd be having a really different conversation that would not be pleasant. As far as the turnbacks go, which are when departments don't spend as much as they've been appropriated, I applaud those departments if they can turn back money and not be foolish just to say, oh, I have money, I'm gonna go out and buy a bunch of stuff. We really kind of hold them to not doing that. But of the 2 million turnbacks in expenses, $1 million was group insurance. And I can't answer why that was, because I didn't do that budget, and I couldn't really determine where that difference was when I tried to look at it. I think it may have just been an overestimation. And then there were some other departments, as was mentioned earlier, where they had, I think Mr. Milano mentioned this, there were vacancies like in the police department. It's really hard because you have somebody retired in the police department, you find a candidate, and then you can't get them a spot in the police academy. So it's not that he just chose to wait to hire, he just couldn't get them, you know, on the staff because there weren't room in the academies or whatever the reason was. So police actually turned back like 460,000. That wasn't because there wasn't a need there. It was because he couldn't get the people, he backfilled it through other, you know, means. I'm not exactly sure, I can't speak for him on what he did on that. So it's things like that. And then the one I spoke to before was $1 million. So $2 million is turnbacks in expenses, of which $1 million was group insurance. 900,000 of it, so say another $1 million, was this prior period adjustment, I'll call it. And then another $1.2 million on the revenues. You can't predict any of that, and you can't assume it's gonna happen again. My motto, I was taught the first day working here, was there's no free cash until the Department of Revenue certifies it as free cash. Because the calculation isn't completely straightforward, and that's why it takes a while sometimes, and that's why they had difficulty the year before. Is I always do a separate calculation and compare it and work with DOR to figure out the differences and talk things through. So, I'm not sure if that really answered the question, but,
That's a good answer.
so,
Thank you.
Thank you.
you're welcome. So,
What was
So
the
another
nine, what was the nine, I'm sorry, what was the 900K for again?
so it was, when they do the free, I'm referring to the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services, when the free cash is certified, they come up with a number and then they do a reasonableness test. It's like, if it falls between 15% and 85% of last year's or something like that, I don't have the exact calculation. If their calculation falls within that range, then they will certify it. If it does not, they will reduce it so that it falls within that range. So the calculation came out high for '21. It didn't fall in those reasonableness parameters, so they reduced it by 840,000, 900,000, something like that, to bring it to that level where they felt comfortable certifying it. This year, that reversed itself, so we got to add it back, and then it met that reasonableness test. It's probably way more than you.
No, that's, I wanted you to be able to revisit it and share that with the group.
Understand it.
But
Because
it's also important for it to be on the record for the town. Because I think a lot of people are watching and trying to understand what's happening here. So thank you for repeating it for us and for repeating it for everyone. I'm sorry to cut you off, Steve. Are you done? you
No,
have
I
a
just have
follow-up on that?
Quick question, do we have any, going forward, any idea what we think we might have the next year or the year after that, or no?
Zero.
Zero.
Zero until
Right.
it's
Until it's
certified.
certified.
Zero.
Yeah.
So you
I'm a
assume,
broken record.
you assume it's zero?
12 years
Okay.
I've been
Thank
saying
you,
that.
thank you.
Zero.
Lori?
So what I was gonna say before I decided to have you elaborate on free cash, which I think was very good. I do agree with Steve in terms of stabilization, and I think in the first pass of one of the budgets that I saw that Mr. Milano had presented, he did have $1 million in stabilization, which I thought was the right, it's not 2, it's not 3, but it's seemed a little bit more reasonable in my mind, but that's just on the stabilization.
Judy?
I'm gonna have to agree with, at this moment, till any information comes out otherwise, Lori and Steve, I like a bigger number to go into the stabilization. If you have it in your pocket, you can't just spend it all. It's, to be, in my mind, fiscally responsible, because you just don't know. If your roof is gonna leak, your car's gonna break down. I use that on a personal note, but I seem to think that should reflect on a townwide note as well. We don't know what's coming our way. That we have a need for cash. And why burden?
You know, can I just interrupt really quickly for this, is that I want to tighten things up on our board a little bit. Can you address your comments to the chair? 'Cause
Oh, I'm
I don't
sorry.
want this to turn into an inquisition.
Oh, I did that incorrectly, sorry.
It's
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
She's helping us out.
You can sit back down
She's
there and
helping
just
us out.
relax.
And so, this is not an inquisition, so if you
No, and
could,
it wasn't meant to be.
No, I know.
I'm sorry,
No, I know.
seemed to be
so if
going
you
that
could,
way.
if you could
I'll come
please
this way now.
address to the chair, thank you.
Alrighty. Although I wonder, you're both wearing blue, did you call each other this morning?
You'll never prove it.
All right. I sort of concur with the comments that I have heard from around the table, that it's just seems wise to keep a little bit more than what we are keeping.
I can't see the screen. Do we have any Zoom hands up?
Nope.
At the moment.
Okay, just,
That's,
no, I'm
we're
sorry, I
not-
thought you were, are you
No, we're
finished? I
good.
don't wanna cut you off.
Right, that's everybody's on.
Emily
so
just raised her hand.
Okay,
If they put a hand up.
Steve,
Just
go
a
ahead.
brief observation. You know, Mr. Chair, thinking about turnbacks, some companies have code of conduct that requires that money to be sent back into the budget, right? Another company I work for has that, where we have to turn our budgets back. So my question is, couldn't we treat some of this free cash as a turn back and push it back into a stabilization fund for consideration to offset some and increase that funding inside there? It seems like it might be a fiscally sound path to consider. If that makes sense. In other words, I'm looking at the free cash surplus, if we move some of it around as like free cash in hand, rather treat some of it as turn back money, which goes back into the budget, that gets pushed back out. And it feels to me like that could be an opportunity to move some more into the stabilization. So I guess I'm supporting the comments that other members have had around stabilization increases.
Steve,
Yeah, just quickly, we'd have to reduce the budget somewhere to offset that, because it's all been kind of allocated in the budget we have in front of us, so we'd have to go back into some of the individual budgets and, you know, whether it's school or police or fire department, and reduce those down to offset that, which I'm in favor of, because I think we need to have a rainy day fund.
so just, so that could mean a couple different things. About what does reduce the budget mean? Because we don't have a budget yet, because we haven't voted on one.
Right.
There's a couple different budget proposals in play, right? There's the level funding. So theoretically, we could recommend proposals in level funding. There are need-based requests on top of level funding. So, we gotta figure out how, if we're gonna have that conversation, how far do we go, right? So we have Nick's proposed budget, it's a balanced budget. He's using the free cash to fund. All right, and then, so we gotta think about, like, when we say, reduce the budget, what are we talking about? Steve, let me ask you, are you talking about, taking the monies out of the proposed needs-based? Or are you talking about going all the way back down to level funding?
I think a little above, we just need to shave everything off a little bit. I mean, us in industry, same things happen, we're shaving everything back, we're not having extra money to spend, we're not traveling, we're not spending extra money. I think we just gotta do the same in our town. And, it's $1.4 million of need-based supplemental request. We could certainly shave a $500,000 out of that and put it back into the rainy day fund and maybe a little bit of the regular budgets. In the school subcommittee, we've been talking about that and how we want to approach it and what is needed, not needed, and we haven't got to the point yet because we still haven't got a final budget to know what the real number is. And I just think, I'm just worried about this town not surviving because we're out of control with spending. So,
Okay.
I've said that 3 times now. I'm sorry.
Okay, Amy Dexter.
I just want to make a point of clarification. The total needs-based supplemental request is 2.7. It's on the back page of what you're looking at.
Sorry, okay.
Of which Mr. Milano, along with the select board and the school committee, have all voted to approve a consensus budget, which I think is an important note, to fund $970,000 of the 2.7.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the backside.
So that's I'm gonna try to characterize that again, and I'll ask for help if I mess this up. Please, thank you. So I think what she's saying, so this is to all the people out in TV land, is that all of the departments, all of them, DPW, Consolidated Facilities, Police, Fire, handed in budgets that were level funding and then supplemental requests. If you add up all the supplemental requests, and a lot of, I believe that a lot of these things are things that we see from these departments year after year after year. And they're almost fatalistic sometimes. I'm just not gonna get it until I get it from Capital Improvement Planning Committee, sometimes it seems. So I'm just gonna,
Or override.
or an override.
Because these aren't capital items. These are operational items, not one-time items, not capital.
Thank you for that. Like I said,
It would be, as you mentioned, a lot of these you see every year. Every year, it's an unfunded need.
so all of those unfunded needs, many of which we see year after year, are adding up to this something on the order of 2.7 million. So then they made their hash and got it down to this 969. And we'll get to it of what that is. But Emily had her hand up onto Zoom. Does she still have her hand up onto Zoom?
She does.
Yeah.
Could we get some of the Zoom people in? Because sometimes they get a little lost.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Yep.
And I just wanted to say, I understand the idea that it would be better to be able to put more in stabilization. I do think, in some ways that some of the revenues were unpredictable during kind of the biggest moments of the impact of COVID. I think some of the needs that developed were unpredictable as well. And I think initially some of the things that were funded through ARPA, at least those of us who are optimists might have seen as short-term needs. I things like addressing learning loss, things like the uptick in mental health crisis calls through the Milton Police Department. I just use those as two examples because I think we've heard that those still are, I mean, in terms of the mental health calls, those are continuing to increase. I think learning loss is a much longer kind of impact and something that needs ongoing support. So I think some of these things might have started as, you know, hopefully being short term, and then there's been this realization that they need to be addressed more in the long term, and they're new needs, and I think they need to be addressed, or we'll see the consequences down the line. So again, while I think in an ideal world, it would be great to put more in stabilization, but I think there are real serious needs that have emerged over the last couple of years, and I think it's really important that we address them. With the idea of an override, I think, Mr. Chair, you mentioned that last year we were kind of told to prepare for it this year, and I think this helps kind of push that off, and I see it as a good thing if we can wait to do that. And this free cash helps because I do think the needs are real. And I don't think that the free cash kind of supporting these needs-based asks is a long-term solution, but I think it gives us a little bit more time, which again, I think it helps. And I just, it's difficult kind of seeing that a lot of departments have these needs-based asks and not everything is being met even through this. But I would just say, I don't think we have a spending problem. I think, I've heard others say this too, I think we have a revenue problem. And I don't think we can address that here, but I still think that that's the problem. That's kind of causing this difficulty with budgeting. I think it's the revenue side rather than the spending side. And I think the fact that departments are, that they didn't kind of go out and spend the money any way they could, shows that they were being fiscally responsible at the end of the year. If there were needs that, again, it's hard to recruit for a lot of roles. There are things that they might have wanted to do and couldn't. And I do applaud them for not kind of finding some other way to spend the money rather than having it end up here and help with the next year. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Allison?
To address some of the comments, ARPA money was intended for the COVID relief. So that goes further in saying that learning loss, so we were given money to address those concerns from that. Budgeting for it would have been what we would do going forward. So we've had 2 years of money that we should be put in those positions to correct some of it. My concern is free cash being used for positions. Generally, I thought, and maybe Amy can say to this, generally free cash was used for one-time expenditures. So to put in our mind that we are going to use free cash for positions from the things that have we were supposed to address with the ARPA money is concerning, because then now we're setting ourselves up for this big deficit for next year for these positions that we should have put in with the ARPA money and the that we should have put in for the ARPA money, and I saw some of that money not being put in for those positions. So, but I did see some on the positive side, like police officers the police department budgeting for that ahead, and we questioned that position, and he was like, I'm preparing my budget for 2025. So we did see some of that, and that was it what we should have been doing with the money that we had. We had $3 million in ARPA money. It's a lot of money.
We had 5 million.
5 million.
Between the ARPA and the Norfolk County money, we had 3.5 and another 2.5, I think, from Norfolk County. So we had over $5 million.
Over 5 million, yeah, and then to now be using the free cash for these positions.
Thank you, and let's please
Oh, no, I'm not, yeah,
refrain
I was just talking to the,
from directing these comments.
no,
at
but I
Amy
actually just
Baxter.
had that question, if,
What was your
the
question?
question was, free cash being used for positions, over one-time expenditures.
So historically, yeah, we've tried to not use free cash or any kind of one-time funding sources to balance the operating budget. But I think we've been saying, or at least, I'm not trying to put words into anybody's mouth, but at least conversations I've been part of for the last 3 years or since COVID started was, if it's not raining now, when is it raining? And a lot of these supplemental needs, at least I'll let Glenn speak on the school side, are addressing the learning loss. And nobody could predict how bad it was. And when we first decided for the '23 budget to supplement some of the needs with ARPA money and one-time funds at that time, it was because these kids need the help, they need the support. And we chose at that time, it was worth doing. And fast forward a year, things, I'll turn it over to you, but I think the needs are not only still relevant, but I think they might even be more relevant. I don't know. I'll turn it over to you, Glenn.
You're all right in that for years we've said free cash should be spent on one-time issues. But in fact, for years, we have not. Because part of free cash is the fact that we anticipate revenue very conservatively, and we always have a certain amount left over. And for years, we have said, all right, well, that, at least that much of it, we can sort of say is sort of recurring free cash, if such a thing exists. But yes, there's a certain amount of it has generally always been used to plug a budget, even though we sit around the table and I've sat where you're sitting and said exactly the same thing, that it should be, it should be used for one-time funds. But at some point, some of it does get it used. Now, this is unusual this year because it is a large amount. It's the largest amount of free cash we've ever had at one time. Although, had last year's not been held back, this year and last year would have been about the same. We've seen free cash go up a bit over the last few years for a variety of reasons. But yes, that's always the goal.
So,
And
can I
then
just
back to
add
your
one
question.
more thing?
Go,
Okay.
you go ahead with that.
Well, you finish and then I
As
just
for
want to
the-
add one thing on.
Yeah, the ARPA funds, a great part of the ARPA funds, this is year, fiscal '23 is year 2 of 3 years of funding, but actually 2.5 years of funding, because it really only came in halfway through last year. So a lot of the ARPA funds was only for 1 year. So when you start and talk about things like the extra nurses that we've had to have at the elementary schools, I don't think anyone thought that funding them for 1 year was going to solve the problem associated with COVID. So carrying some of those things forward, I think, is still necessary. Will they be, now, I will tell you, people have been arguing for more nurses in the schools for years and years and years, and we've just never been able to do it. We've been sticking with 1 nurse per school. But as needs have grown, that's been a problem going on. But I don't think anyone reasonably thought that adding a couple part-time nurses for 1 year was going to solve the COVID problem. So, some of these things really do have to continue, and the ARPA funding isn't there for them. A lot of the ARPA funding was only for really 1.5 years, a little bit was for 2.5 years. There's, a few things that are carrying into next year. So there is an expectation that some of it is going to have to carry forward for at least a while.
So the other point to note in this consensus balanced budget is there's continuing, if you recall last year, there was 900 and something thousand for the school system being funded with ARPA. 650,000 of that's being funded with additional ARPA in '24 in this balanced proposal. Just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
That was
And then-
375.
Pardon?
We were presented 375,
Of ARPA?
yeah. Last meeting.
Yeah, that's what we got.
Yeah.
So then we were taking the 6 that we were getting, so that's why I said that $1 million would be in the override for next year. Because I was putting the positions, it was 600 that we got for free cash that you guys are planning to push forward in positions, 600. And then they had told us 370, so that we would be around $1 million.
So who said 375,000 of ARPA?
Right, those left, yeah.
That was in the meeting the other day.
Yeah, we were in the meeting the other day. It was me.
So I wasn't here, so I'm gonna defer to Mr. Milano, and I'll tell him there's a question as to how much is being,
We were in a subcommittee with Pavlicek,
Yeah.
and he said.
was I there?
No.
Okay.
No, I was looking at your chart of what's funded for this year. That did not include any of the extra ARPA that had not been allocated. So we have 379,000, I think it is, in ARPA funding for year 3. Remember the,
Oh, you're talking about ARPA that was already approved?
Yes.
This, okay, that's a separate, that's out of the treasury, out of the county ARPA funds,
From Norfolk County?
from the county. Some proposals were put forward that were approved by the school committee and the select board and the county. That included some school positions, and that was for half of 22, 23, and 24. There's still, 24 is still remaining. But then in last year's operating budget, there was another 970,000, I'll call it, of ARPA positions that we said, we understand this is one time, that are in there that were funded with ARPA. 650,000 of that is also being proposed to be funded with ARPA, separate from the 375.
Now I'm really confused.
of
We need
unallocated
that
ARPA.
explained tomorrow in the meeting.
Can I ask a question, just knowing that, like, is that okay? to
Go
ask a
ahead,
question?
please.
So ARPA funds, so there's not like, we're still getting funds, there's not like one set amount, or is it a set amount that you got that gets phased over time?
So there was 2 sets of dollars that were allocated from the government. One was from the state, was ARPA, and then Norfolk County got assigned X amount of millions of dollars, and that got turned down to us, so some of it came to our town. So it's 2 different funding sources, if you will, all related to ARPA. And I thought ARPA was done, but I'm confused now, because I
We
don't.
haven't spent it all.
Okay.
We've received all of the treasury money. It hasn't all been allocated or assigned to a certain
From the state.
project from the state.
Okay.
We also have county money available that has not been identified for a specific purpose. Those two combined total approximately $650,000, of which the budget proposal has carved out. If you look on the revenue page, there's ARPA funding as a source of funds. And those are school positions. And it's to continue some that were approved in '23 for another year.
So we got allocated the money, but we didn't spend it, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
And the select board didn't vote where to spend it yet. So
Okay.
it's available.
But one of the funds was only for roads, sewers, and
They,
infrastructure.
no,
No?
it's under the county money is under the select board to approve projects.
Okay.
And they decide what to put forward to the county. And then treasury's a little bit more flexible. Still has to be COVID pandemic related. That's why a lot of the needs tend to fall to the schools, because that's where we see most of it. But some of the other things that we've done with ARPA money is some water main projects, some
yeah,
infrastructure
yeah,
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We've done some small business grants to local businesses. So I don't have the numbers in front of me. We can get that if you want to see where it stands right now. But I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that within this proposal, if you look at the revenue page, there's free cash and then there's 650 ARPA as well.
Mr. Pavlicek.
So when I put your budget books together back in late November, I identified on one page what I said, the ARPA funding, the 900 and some
Yeah.
$1,000 that needed to be spent to retain all the different positions that were funded by ARPA. At that point, I was not aware that we still had another $679,000 in unallocated ARPA, because I had been on the job for about 2 weeks. And since then, we have talked about the fact that we want to use some of the unallocated ARPA funding to basically push that ARPA cliff of $970,000 off a year, or at least 2/3 of it, so we don't have to, so we can fund it for one more year and then make the decision on what needs to be continued and what doesn't need to be continued. So that's sort of the disconnect here, is that it didn't appear in my original book, because at the time I didn't know about it.
Well, there's a number under 978,000, right? That's the number for opera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make a comment. The comment is this, is that it started off the meeting saying that what we wanted to do was to like look at a big level first, but we're also aware there has been some discussion offline within the Warrant Committee with the school budget people who are looking at the budget, that you all had a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. And what might have to happen, just because of our need to just do this, that a lot of the detail work that we might have addressed tomorrow might happen here. And so we might have a mini school budget meeting while we look at some of this stuff. So what I want to try to ask people to do is look at the small, but look at the big picture too, okay? Because we're really trying to get a sense, of how comfortable are we with the, $969,000. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to have the conversation with regards to the schools and their budget now is because they are the biggest part of that. And that the discussion of that is gonna drive a lot of the other decisions that we made. So I just wanted to make that comment, okay? Amanda, thank you.
I guess, I keep coming back to, I guess this has to do with free cash as well, but more so with the ARPA funding. And I'll be candid that I was not on the committee last year, but as a town meeting member, I struggled with this when I heard it, which was, again, we're taking one time or funds that are meant to go across 3 years. The intent was to address COVID-related issues. I could argue that some of these don't necessarily feel as they pertain to COVID, but maybe addressing staffing issues that weren't met previously. But I guess my bigger issue was last year and now is that these are, it's like assuming a grant is you get a grant for a job that's a 2-year job, and then you reassess after 2 years whether or not you're gonna continue it. There were, I can't remember how many jobs, there was all of these were funded, this was a number of positions that were funded with essentially funds that are only intended to cross 3 years, but now they're on the books moving forward. And that's where I'm struggling with how to look at the budget, because there's an influx of cash that's not necessarily gonna continue, but it created a higher budget level than we otherwise would have, but it's not a higher level of revenue that will continue, if that makes sense. And that's where I'm really, this is not my world, but that's where I'm struggling with some of this.
Do we have any Zoom people?
Oh, Henny had his hand up, but it's not anymore. Oh, yes it is.
Oh, Henny, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, Henny, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think that I'm glad that I was waiting to speak, and Mr. Chair, you decided that we would delve into the school budget and other budgets. I think that's helpful. I think generally I agree with Member Geister's trajectory and thinking that we do need to be cautious as far as, economically. We couldn't have foreseen what happened with COVID, obviously. And I think, and especially with where the economy is, I think we do need, there's a certain level of caution that is certainly required. I also agree with what you said, Mr. Chair, with regard to needing to balance the macro and the micro views of these budgets. It's hard to look at it just from this view and in one time, say, because we've seen presentations already, and we've seen some that balance out. And so where I also struggle with thinking about one-time funds, and we talked a lot about them last year. But just as there are one-time influxes of income, there are also one-time expenditures, right? Or there are things that are needs that appear that are specific to the moment in time that we're in. And so I think the way in which I think we've thought about this in years past, and the way I think about it is thinking about balancing sort of the needs against that spend, right? So I think that balance should be done. It's good to have this top level, but I ultimately believe that, you know, say all politics are local, all budget must be balanced in that department. And I remember specifically a few years back when we approved the firehouse. And I thought the firehouse, I remember coming in feeling like, you know, I'm not really thinking that we need a new firehouse. It's a lot of money, but if we can get the money bonded, we're going to look at that. And I remember hearing about there being no gender-specific facilities and the impact of mold in the building, and suddenly, you know, the way I was voting started to change, because there is value in spending money that's going to save you money in the long run. Right? Ameliorating mold today to stave off the health insurance claims that you're going to see in 2 years or 3 years. Putting in facilities that are going to make our firefighters be healthier. When we talked about some of the lung disease and some of the different things, suddenly the money that you're going to spend now makes sense in the long-term picture of the town's fiscal growth and development. And so I just want to point out that sometimes spending is not just, well, let's just put all the money in. Maybe I'm fresh off not trusting banks because of my experiences this week. So putting the money in the bank doesn't seem as safe as it used to also. But I think we need to really think about each need and make sure that while we look at the general picture, we consider the need, right? In the school, we've seen some of the needs that the schools have. I don't think everything should be funded, I agree there. But let's look at the specific needs in context. For the police, let's look at the specific needs. We heard from the Council of Aging, the numbers, the statistics that they're facing. For us to just say use last year's budget, Mr. Chair, doesn't feel, would feel appropriate. I hope my point is coming across in terms of how I think we should approach this. The question I have, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind clarifying, is the consensus budget that Mr. Milano's put together, does that mean that everyone has already agreed to that this is the budget and they bought into it? If, Mr. Chair, you wouldn't mind having Ms. Dexter clarify. So when we see committees, are they all already aligned to, this is the amount that they would be willing to live with? Or are we going to see more of that sort of horse trading downstream? If I'm not understanding what you meant by that, that would be helpful for me to clarify, Mr. Chair.
So let me start, and then I'll ask for help, because I think the question was first directed to me. So it looks to me like the consensus budget starts with, it's Mr. Milano puts his budget forward. And then there's a series of meetings that he has with the department heads, with the select board budget committee, and then I think it's, the question is, can people live with it? That's, you know, maybe at some point, you know, the process gets to the end point, and this is what they're left with. And then it goes to the select board to approve it. So where we're at now is with the budget has gone through its process, where Mr. Milano has met with the department heads, there's been discussion. I think it's a compromise budget. I think the budget, it's really Mr. Milano compromising from where he started, because I think that he's putting approximately $500,000 more into needs-based than he originally did. So that's the compromise, is that the requests are coming in at 2.7 million. I think that his original budget was something like to fund something on the order of $500,000 of needs-based. That is now up, that's where we are. Amy Dexter and Max for your help with that. If there's anything that I said that's incorrect, would you please correct it?
So the only thing I would clarify is by approved consensus budget. It's been presented by Mr. Milano. Yes, there's been revisions through input from department heads, boards and committees, school committee, select board. It's been approved as a consensus budget by the school committee, approved as a consensus budget by Mr. Milano, and approved as a consensus budget by the select board. We don't get a vote from these other boards and committees, but Mr. Milano has had several discussions with the department heads that represent those boards and committees. And
thank you. So it's a lot of process.
a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, it's a lot of process. That begins as soon as this budget is passed.
Right, and can I add, doesn't really
Sure.
answer the question, but I just want to add a couple things. And add to what I say, Glenn, because you were involved in the conversations. Throughout these meetings that we've had, which I think went very well, like the collaboration between the select board and the school committee was outstanding. They worked well together. Glenn and I worked well together. Mr. Milano and the superintendent worked well together. A common theme in the discussion was they felt that the needs are there, they're valid needs, that the proposed balanced budget puts forth what we've all agreed are needs, that it will result more than likely in an operational override ballot question for 25. But let the voters decide, let town meeting decide. And if the voters or town meeting for 25, like if town meeting decides or warrant committee decides that they're not in agreement, then that's up to this committee to decide how they're going to change it, how they're gonna revise it. But that this, from those committees, that board, this is our proposal, this is our recommendation, whether or not this committee agrees or not, that's a different question. But the feeling was, we felt strongly these were needs, felt strongly to put it forth to this committee, possibly forward to the warrant committee, and in 25, if the voters decide they don't feel these positions are important, then they can vote the override down. Did that sum up?
Yep. No, it was a very collaborative process. It was probably the most collaborative process I've been involved with, in my years of doing this. So it's the first time I can think of that we've really come to the warrant committee with all boards having voted and said, we think this is a good place to go. So, and I've been where it's been very, very different. So I'm happy it's where it is.
And,
Okay.
and just one more thing is all of the reserves, which are all of the stabilizations, are currently at $6.2 million. And reflected in the bond rating agencies, they're at a good level. So some of our discussions also were, all right, we have another bite at the apple come October. If there is free cash certified at June 30th of 23, that then we can put some into the reserves. But there's been other years, recent, where we've taken out of stabilization to do these similar things. So we're not taking out, we're putting some in. We thought it was a good compromise to keep the level of service where the residents expect and where the students need.
Did everybody get that? That's a good, thank you for bringing that up. We've been there, I've been there, where we're balancing the budget by taking money out of stabilization. So we're actually putting,
And it override.
well,
In a future year, but not the same.
right.
Well, past years, I've been here
Yeah,
27 years, so.
Yes,
Ch-
Mr. Chair?
Also to Zoom people in. Oh, Henny, yes.
And that was, I just wanted to clarify that point. Thank you for saying that. And if I may address that was my clarity. I've never seen this way before. So I was trying to figure out, is this a new thing? Is this a process Mr. Milano brought? Because this is different than what we've seen before. I agree with what you said. Normally we have to do some work to get it here. So maybe this is a different process, and I'm glad that it's been pointed out, because this means something different. What you said, Ms. Dexter, it means something different to us. If there's alignment of the vote, and our decision is now to decide if we agree or not with the budget versus we need to find some way to get this balance, it's a very different setup. So it would have been, I wish it would have been helpful to have known this was the process up front, but I appreciate knowing it now.
Thank you, Henny. Jay was next.
Okay. Yeah, I think the question about the I'm muted, confusing. The question about the stabilization fund is important, and that's something we have to look at. To me, for as long as I've been in town government, usually just as a town meeting member, the amount we contribute to stabilization always seemed like a random number to me. It was never clear how much we should really have in the stabilization budget. I did a bit of research today. It was sort of rushed. I might have gotten a little bit wrong. It looks like before the financial crisis, I went back to 2007, looks like we had about $1 million in stabilization before then. And that was not enough. You can read the Warrant Committee's comments in 2007 before things went to heck. And they said, this is not enough. As far as I can tell, 2007, 2008, 2009, we got through that without using stabilization money. Please correct me if you know otherwise. So let's go past that and say, so in 2010, we had about 1.4 million in stabilization. Over 10 years, we grew that from 1.4 million to 5 million over 2020. That's great. So we're at $5 million in 2020, went through a once-in-a-century pandemic, and we used $1.8 million of that stabilization money. I'm so glad we didn't have 1.4 in the bank. I'm so glad we had $5 million. We used 1.8 million. We've since paid it back. Okay, so now we have, I mean, you said 6.2. I don't know, I was thinking 5. Maybe I'm thinking stabilization budget versus I'm not including all things. Somewhere around there. I think we've got around 5% of our budget in stabilization. And as far as I can tell, the town of Milton does not have a policy about how much we should have in stabilization. I've heard people say that it should be 5%. I've looked at other towns. It's harder than you would think to see what their policies are, but 5% seems to be in the ballpark of what people think is reasonable. Thank you for pointing out. Thank you for pointing out that the credit rating agencies, they seem to think we're doing good. Okay, so if is 5 million enough for us? If not, how much? I'd love some structures to what we're putting in, but we're not going to get that in the next 2 days. But one thing I do want to say is there are other parts of the budget, and I would like to share my screen if possible. There are other parts of the budget that give me more comfort. In where we stand on this budget. And okay. So, I mean, that's the big question we're thinking about. Do we savings versus services? Do we spend it? Do we save it? I think that's, our chairman told us to come in prepared to big picture, so I think this is the big picture. So one thing, I'd like to really make sure, these are a few things I'd like to point out as to what do we really have as a town? And I'm glad JJ's not in the room because I'm not an accountant. So when I say things like balance sheet, real accountants will laugh at me. But I'm just saying that to say, how much do we really have in savings? And let's make sure we know that. In addition to what we call stabilization budget, okay, raise your hand if you're surprised I'm starting out with pensions. You are? Okay, yeah, the pension plan, one of my loves. We are putting more money in the pension plan than we have to. As of a year and a half ago, the fall of 2021, we were looking at having the pension plan funded in the year 2027. That was the plan. Our actuary came and talked to us. Sorry, I'll speed it up. I'll just say in 2021, the retirement board had two choices. They could take the aggressive stance and increase it by 6% a year, pay it off 1 year earlier, or the not aggressive stance and increase it 1.5% a year. They took the aggressive stance. I'm not saying one way or the other if that was the right choice, but I'm saying since they made that choice, we're putting $700,000 more in the pension plan than we had to. Okay, That's a form of savings. It's not savings in the sense that we are not allowed to reach into the pension plan and take money out and spend it on whatever. But with pensions, you got two choices, pay me now or pay me later. We've been choosing to pay ahead of time. You know, are we being conservative enough? Are we putting enough money aside? This is a form of putting money aside. Count that $700,000 to putting more money aside than we have to. And then that'll help us when we're fully funded. Next, healthcare. So there is a healthcare account out there. Every month we put healthcare premiums into that account. 24% of the premium comes from the employee and 76% comes to us. And we put it in that account every month. And every month when people have healthcare claims, those get taken out of that account. Think of that like your checking account. You don't want that ever to go to zero. If that goes to zero, it means you can't pay your bills. But you also don't want it to get too big. If it gets too big, you say, why is this money just sitting in my checking account? Let's do something else with it. And Ms. Dexter can correct me if I'm wrong. As far as I can tell, I didn't update my numbers yet. Yeah, it's the final line over there. We have about 5.9 million in our account, and a prudent amount is about 4.3 million. So again, we cannot reach into that and take it out and spend it on stuff. But at some point in the future, we could have our healthcare premiums be a little bit lower, our employees pay a little bit less, we pay a little bit less, because we have that large cushion out there that we can draw down. So again, we're being quite conservative in lots of parts of our budget. And then there's the Poor Road Stabilization Fund. We set it up a few years ago. We put $200,000 in there, and we forgot about it. And it's just sitting there lonely, and it's sad. So, you know, we've got financial cushions out there. Now I'll go to income statement. What's coming up in our budget? I wasn't done with pensions. I'm sorry. So, the pension plan will be. I can't predict the future. It looks like it'll be fully funded sometime in the next 3 years. It's entirely possible to be funded as soon as next year's budget. It's entirely possible it's funded as of January 1st of this year. We just don't know it yet. Either way, when it becomes funded, whether it's next year or the year after that or year after that, the plan is our pension contribution will go down by $5 million or more, depending on where we are. The current plan is to take $2.5 million of that, put it into retiree medical funding. That means we'll have another $2.5 million of room in our budget. Now, as I say, it may be that this comes to fruition for the following year's budget that we're talking about a year from now. It may not be. But at some point in the future, it's not all doom and gloom. We're going to have this. We've been saving and scrimping and tightening our belt for 20 years, so we get to the point where we'll fully fund the pension. It's in sight. We can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief. And the other thing on, if you want to talk about pensions, I'd love to, but let me finish off this slide.
Not my expertise, but I do have a question.
Okay, about pensions?
Yeah. So when does the law say we have to be fully funded as a pension? Because I know there was a law that was passed, and a lot of corporations are nowhere near that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, do you know?
One of them says 2040, one of them says sooner.
Yeah, it's 2040.
2040, so
It's
it's
been
to be-
kicked forward a few times, but I think it's 2040.
So they have to be
we're-
fully funded by 2040?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're being the fiscally prudent, fiscally conservative people by putting more in.
But is this, I think I asked about this, because why are we trying to get it funded so soon? But back to the issue of the policy, we don't have a policy, so to speak, I think, on stabilization, an exact policy that's been voted on stabilization. The retirement board did vote a policy
Yep.
on retirement.
Yep.
So we're kind of
Yep.
Which is a separate
following
appointed
it. Yeah.
board.
Yeah,
That, the
And they
select
are-
board and this committee has no jerk.
yeah, we can't
no
tell them
say
what
in
to do.
That is, it's
Mhm.
up to the retirement board. You can certainly request, which Mr. Funling has done, and they've chose to stick with,
The funding that they
Yeah.
had.
it's in sight and they want it funded so that those funds can free up for other things.
So
So
like-
we do have an OPEB funding policy that was recently adopted, which goes into this 2.5.
So
OPEB
by-
is the retirement,
Yes.
retiree medical.
Post-employment benefit, post-employment benefits.
So
So,
by the end of next year, we have to be fully funded? And it seems like,
No.
No, 2040.
2040?
The
40,
legal
40.
statute is
The law.
2040.
Okay, I wrote 24,
The
sorry.
retirement board's current approved funding schedule for the pension plan has it funded between 2027, 2028.
Okay.
Each year they reconsider that. I wasn't involved in the vote the last 2 years, but I know when I was involved, it was important to all of those board members, of which I am one of them, felt strongly that they wanted to reach that target to free up those funds to help with some of these other operating needs.
And so,
And
I'm
we
sorry.
could push it off, but that board has, at this point in time, chosen to stick with plan.
So that board's separate from the select board?
Yes.
Yes.
2 are appointed by the select board, 2 are, voted by the employees that are in the
Yeah.
pension plan, and then a 5th is voted by the
Is
rest of the
by-
board.
And then I'm ex officio,
Okay.
so the finance director is automatically on it.
And they have made it very clear, they're not gonna do what the select board says.
Well, that's why it's an independent board.
Not agreeing or
They are not
disagreeing, just
pressured by.
stating facts.
Thank you, I didn't know that.
And I think it's good that they have a policy.
Yeah.
So there is there's a stated policy that we can follow.
Yeah.
So, but that means when it's fully funded, we'll have another 2.5 million to put back into the operating budget. Is that correct?
It
Correct,
appears
if
to
all
me
goes to
that-
plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you've got to continue funding it, though. It doesn't
You have
stop.
to
True.
continue
But it's
spending a
not-
certain
I don't know,
level.
but
It's
of,
lower, it'll drop from like 9 million to 4 million.
But the difference is what we're paying now for all the years when we didn't put
Right,
anything
right,
in.
right. Yep, got it. Thank you.
So when we're saying, should we be saving more? The pension is a form of savings. Again, it's not a form of savings, we can reach it,
Well,
great example, it's like your 401k. You can't take the money out, but it's still savings. So, any other issues about,
You can take it out, but it's a penalty.
well, okay, then it's not like you can't 401k.
so my question, I think, goes you might know the answer. Can we ever take it up?
No.
For anything other than, so it's savings, but yet it's
fact,
specific,
Overfunding is a danger.
but it's specific to the pension.
Mm-hmm.
So
Milton
if something
Retirement Board.
catastrophic, completely catastrophic happened financially, it's not savings then for us, like stabilization is. Is that a
Yeah,
true
it's
statement?
gonna pay off the year we fully fund it.
But it's better than trying to catch up.
Mr.
And I-
Havlicek would like to make a point.
Yeah, the way the retirement system used to work is we used to put as much money into the budget to pay what we anticipated we would need to pay out to retirees that year. And around 2000 or so, there was the notion of the unfunded pension liability, which said, you have a liability out there on your books for an enormous amount of money, and you have nothing to back it up with, because you're just paying as you go. It's basically, you're paying the interest on the credit card, you're not doing anything to the balance. So at that point, a schedule was put in place to fund that unfunded pension liability. Originally, it was gonna be funded by 2017 or 18, I think, but then 2008 happened, and the state pushed it off. But always, when the state has pushed it off, the Milton Retirement Board, to their credit, has always been more aggressive than the state allowed. When the state pushed the date off to 2027, the Milton Retirement Board was on for 2021. And then, after the last couple of years, when the state pushed it off to 2040, the Retirement Board is still on a more aggressive tact to pay off that unfunded pension liability. So there will still be a cost, but it'll just be the ongoing cost. It won't be this makeup cost for all the time you never put in the first place when you funded the system. So it is a giant catch-up.
And that's just for Milton retirement, not mass teachers.
And how is the math teacher's situation?
It's through the cherry sheet.
Mass teachers essentially have the same issue, which is why the employee contribution went up to 11%. At 11%, the Mass Teachers Retirement System and the Mass State Employees Retirement System and so forth are self-sustaining. The issue then was, went back in time, you had some people who had paid in 3% and had paid in 5%. And basically, it took a while to make up for that, because that was an unsustainable amount. But now, everyone since 2001 or something like that is paying an 11%. The state and the Mass Teachers Retirement Systems are essentially self-funding and self-supporting. They're at the point where we want to be in 2 years.
So there's no potential liability for the town for that?
No, it's a charge back as pay-as-you-go. We're the, yeah, it's a charge back.
So the only other thing I wanted to say as far as, looking at what's our income or expenses going to be in the next year is looking at the local receipts. And this is something that one of our guests talked about earlier. When we look at the 23 budget, I'm just taking the 23 budget and then putting in what Mr. Milano said we have for free cash adjustments. So that tells me we thought we'd get $5.7 million out of these three items. Now we're saying we're going to get $700,000 more than we were expecting. So to me, that says in this year that we are currently in, we expect to get $6.5 million out of this. Now our budget for this coming year that we're planning says we're only going to get $6 million out of this. $500,000 less than we think we're getting this year. That's good. I agree that we should be conservative. I agree. It's always better to underestimate your coming revenue than overestimate your coming revenue. Don't want to disagree with the numbers, but if I'm wondering how am I going to sleep at night, how is this budget setting us up for next year? This is one more thing that gives me a little bit of relief that, okay, everything I've been pointing to, we're conservative here, we're conservative there, we're conservative here, we're conservative there. I think we're in a pretty good spot. So let me stop sharing my screen.
Okay, Amy Dexter,
Can
you
you
go
just
back to that
go
now?
back?
Oh.
Because I just,
Yep. Did I, please
I'm
tell
not
me
sure
if I
I
said
agree
something
with
wrong.
your analysis.
Okay, thank you.
So I just want to make
Thank you.
sure.
Yes, please correct me.
Because whenever we see what actuals are, we take that into account when we do the next year's budget. So I'm
Okay.
not sure the 4.3 on motor vehicle plus the 3, that 4.7 number is, to me, is way too
Okay.
high.
Oh, I did.
I'm not sure that logic of how that's working.
Yeah,
is,
what I did was I looked at the budget we set up
should
this
be
time
relied
last
on.
year.
I look at 5 to 10 years back, and I take a 5-year average, and then.
Oh, so you're saying we shouldn't look from one year to the next? Okay.
Because you don't necessarily know, so it can be a little dangerous, I think, to go in that high. That's
Well, and that's why we're,
That's why you're not an accountant.
yes, sure.
That, I hope it happens, but, nobody in the finance department is saying they think we're gonna get 4.7
Okay.
in excise this year.
Okay, thank you.
Have faith. Have faith. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. That was good.
Buy an expensive car for 20,000.
Are there any questions? Okay. Thank you. I think it, Lori, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that the 2.5% on the real estate taxes, that gets factored in every year, that we're
The
gonna.
Prop 2.5?
The Prop 2.5.
Yeah, if you look at, we take the, so when we're doing 24, we take what was reported on the 23 tax rate recapitulation sheet or whatever, and we roll that forward. That's why when you look at the 23 comparatives, they might be different than what was in the warrant, because I adjust to actual to reflect like the new growth and everything that we actually reported to the DOR and used for the rates for 23, and then add the 2.5%, and then the exclusions get added to that as well.
Okay.
Like the debt exclusion, the special purpose stabilization fund exclusion.
And of the 144 on this page, the needs-based and the 969, the health insurance of 144.5, bottom of the second page.
Yes.
And where does that, how does that break up between the town and the schools?
So there's 9 employees proposed in the balanced budget for the schools at $17,000 each, which comes out to be $119,000, and then the difference is the town.
Thank you.
And I just want to say, on the town side, we have some more flexibility than the schools does, where, like, There's listed a town engineer. The plan was to use a consultant beta,
Is
so
that
that we're
the
not.
traffic guy, the traffic person?
Yeah, the traffic engineer.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think the only one on the town side that was an actual person was where?
Is it the police?
Oh, the police, that are 3/4.
Yes.
This last
Department,
section,
yeah.
okay.
So we figured, again, we factored in that if it gets approved, by the time they do a search, they find candidates, they get them in the academy, it won't be a full year the first year. That's why those numbers
Are
look
so
low.
low. Okay. And then, Jay, would you mind putting back up your slideshow? That was
I
great.
love showing
Thank
off the
you.
things I made.
Can you also send it to us too? It was great.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Let me see. It'll be slightly different, it'll be the updated version, but, which,
The page on health insurance.
okay. You just like the animation, don't you?
I do. So,
Oops, I'm sorry.
I think it was this slide. So I just wanted to ask Amy if, so I think we're saying that this is overfunded in the healthcare account, was your message, Jay?
I mean, I try to be careful with my words, but that's one way to put it.
So my question is, if there was a catastrophic event, someone is injured, and I believe we're self-insured,
Yes.
that we needed to pay out,
Mhm.
would it come out of healthcare, or is there another fund that it comes out of?
It
So
would
that
come
could be
of
wiped
there,
out
but we
quickly.
do have stop-loss insurance, and I believe it's at 175,000. So, for instance, if one of my family members gets extremely ill and their medical bills go over $175,000 a year, the town is on the hook for 175, and then we have stop-loss insurance, which pays the difference. So if that's $1 million, the stop-loss will
The
pay the
insurance
difference,
covers it.
and the town pays the 175.
Okay.
It's all paid through there because it's claims, and all the claims come out of there for Milton retirees as well as active
Okay,
employees.
okay.
And the fire department member that got hit by a car a few years back?
That's the
So
one.
that has a separate fund. We did a
Right.
special purpose override for that. That's a separate fund. And in this proposed budget, that's to raise $500,000 and put $500,000 in there. The difficulty with that one is the expenses can vary from year to year. And so we watch that, but we've consistently raised $500,000 because we don't wanna let that go low, but that's not building and building and building either. That the $500,000 is approximately what we're seeing as an average, some years higher, some years lower. The first couple of years, much higher than that. So that is reasonable. What was your other question?
Well, that's also as a consequence of the fact we didn't have stopgap
Yes.
insurance when that happened.
Yeah.
And when I first started in September of 2010, we were borrowing money to pay for that.
Yeah,
And then we
remember,
put that
yeah.
mechanism for the exclusion in place. I just want to comment on the balances, because I know
Okay.
Jay had a question. And the number you're looking at from Cook and Company is where they expect the balance to be at June of 2024. The
Oh, whoops.
balance that I gave you was as of the middle of February, in the middle of the year. There's
Okay.
some timing differences that come into play.
Okay.
I just ran the ledger report. If we haven't moved the money in there yet from the employees and the town match,
Okay,
there might be claims in there without the offsetting premiums. But also, the thing to note is the balance always seems a little bit larger at June 30th because the teachers don't get paid over the summer. So the last paycheck in June, we do what's called a lump sum
okay,
pay. That covers them through the summer, and they get 6 pay periods. So that's the equivalent of 3 months, or 6 pay periods, bi-weekly pays, of health insurance deductions that go into the fund.
okay.
And then all the claims for the summer get paid out with nothing going in. So it always seems unusually large at the end of June, so you can't just go by that number,
Okay,
if
thank
that
you.
makes sense.
But if
So
I,
if I may, I feel like we're getting to the
Yeah.
micro granular. Okay, I wanted to start at 30,000. We understood we needed to get into the weeds a little bit. It-
Yep.
So I don't wanna, okay, so if we could move on, thank you, thank you, all right. Steve,
yeah, I'm gonna give my typical comment I give all the time. Proposition 2.5 is what we can go up to by law. Doesn't mean we have to go up 2.5%. We could go down 2.5%, and this town is just automatically, we get a raise every year. I don't get a raise every year at 2.5%. And I've said this probably 10 times, but it's the nature of the beast, and I don't think we should start there. I think we should start level, what we had last year, and not just assume we get 2.5% raise, because that just comes out of my pocket and when I pay my taxes. I've said that 5 times now.
okay. Does anybody else have any questions at this time for Amy Dexter and Glenn Pavlicek?
This is great, thank you.
Thank you for coming, thank you for helping us. I think we should start having our discussion about how we would like to proceed. Okay, thank
Want us
you.
to go back?
Yes, please, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
You get thrown into
I'm available for questions.
So how to proceed? We've got, we've got to work through this. And I'm open to suggestions. Let me throw out like what I think a starting point could be, just to get a sense of the committee and to see where we're going. One thing we could do, just as a start, would be to,
Help Judy, help Judy, get her phone. Oh, boy.
so we have the, just call it, Nick's consensus budget. One thing we could do would be to throw out a motion, someone could make a motion to approve the consensus budget as presented to us, as is. We can start with that. Otherwise, see where that goes. Otherwise, we have to have a motion, right? So normally what happens is every line item budget is an article. So like, public safety is an article. Council on Aging is an article. They're all reflected in the budget. So for instance, on the spreadsheet, in the far left column, you will see the article, a lot of them have the article number. So on the spreadsheet, it will refer to. So when we are voting our budget, we're voting our recommendations on the budget, right? So we'll get to, for instance, let me just pick one. Like, let's say we're talking about Article 11, General Government Appropriation. The article is that it's at whatever dollar amount. Does the warrant committee vote to recommend or not recommend that dollar amount? If we vote yes, we vote yes. The comment is we vote yes. If we vote no, we vote no. And, we could put down a different number. If we put down a different number, we would need, we have the spreadsheet, we would need to make sure that we are presenting this balanced budget, okay? So, how to get started, like one way of starting, Jay.
Oh, I just sort of want to discuss the issue, not make a motion.
No, yes.
Okay. So I hear a lot of very good concerns around this table, and when I talk to people who understand the town budget much more than I do, they say, and they have said for years, the way Milton is set up with being dependent on residential property taxes, and those can go up 2.5% a year, and health insurance goes up 5% a year, and things come together, and Milton is set up to have an override every 3 to 4 years. Now, I started becoming aware of town politics in the previous decade, and we had our last operating override in 2017, and for 2, 3, 4 years before that, every year I would hear, we're going to need an override this year, no question. And then somehow the select board or somebody would pull a rabbit out of their hat and they're like, we can get through to another year. And that happened and happened and happened. And then in 2017, we ran out of rabbits and hats and we had to go to an override. And if that logic holds, that we need an override every 3 years or so, that would have taken us to 2020, 2021. And then I think everybody would agree. The reason we didn't need an override in 2020 and 2021 is because of ARPA. The reason we didn't need an override in 2022 is because of ARPA. Now the reason we don't need an override this year is because of this one-time money. So everyone is correct that, one way to look at it is it's imprudent to spend one-time money on operating expenses. The other way to look at it is we'd be facing an override except for this one-time money, so let's get it through. The other, another way to look at it is, what would we say to the people in Milton? Would we say, sorry, we know we need 3 more special educators in Tucker. Sorry, we know we need 2 more police officers. Sorry, we know we need this and that, and we have the money to pay for it, but we'd rather put it in a savings account. That's not an unreasonable thing to say, but it's also not unreasonable to say the opposite. We've got the money. We need special education teachers. We need police officers. And as was said earlier, we set this up, and then the voters can say yes or the voters can say no. So that's why I feel comfortable. We might get into the nits and bits and say, oh, I don't like this needs-based request, or I do like this needs-based request, and there might be some fiddling around the edges. But on the whole, I feel comfortable with Nick's budget, and that's why. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. I mean, people, this is the kind of comment that we should be having now, okay? Not that everyone should reiterate and agree, but this is what should start to happen, because we have to really get the sense of where the committee's coming out on this, so that we can start having some votes and start, putting our recommendations together. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add at this time? We have a hand up.
Dream.
Jareen.
Hey, folks. So just hearing everything over and not acting like I understand everything, I would like to give us the opportunity to vote. Put it on the table. I want to make the motion for us to vote on accepting the budget as it is right now, and give us the opportunity at least to do so. If anyone else would like to second.
Second.
Okay. The motion was made by Jareem and seconded by Jay. Discussion, Steve has his hand up.
Yes, so.
And that's Steve Geister for the record.
Yeah, the subcommittee for the school board is meeting tomorrow, for the school budget tomorrow. And I think we'd like to discuss kind of where we're at and if there's any places where we think we may be able to save a little money. I think that's our plan tomorrow. So I'd rather not vote for it tonight. We'll give you a full report tomorrow night on where we're at. I mean, Lori's on it, Allison's on it, on the committee. So, and I think we're planning on kind of talking budget tomorrow, because we didn't spend a lot of more philosophical stuff and things like that in the past, and we're ready to look at the budget in detail, and we'd like to do our diligence and then bring it forward.
O'Henny. Is O'Henny there?
Yes.
So you and I were talking about that motion to table.
Yes.
If somebody makes a motion to table and then there is, We can vote to table it, then we can vote to table this vote.
Correct. You can make a motion to table, or to table a motion indefinitely, or table it for now. So we can do that.
Right. So, okay, thank you. So this is to the committee, this is the issue, is that we have a motion that's been made and seconded. We've opened it up for discussion. We have the school committee, budget subcommittee of committees, had a previously scheduled meeting for tomorrow. We had discussed that there was a previously scheduled a meeting for tomorrow, that ideally we would have already have it happen, but it sounds like that committee is asking for more time in order to meet and then to be able to make a recommendation to the committee as a whole. In light of the size of that budget, the school committee budget, and in light of the size of the need-based budget, which is under discussion, it's probably something we should consider. So I think that what I would be interested in is, I would be interested in if there is a motion to table this matter until we next meet, which at this point is tomorrow night, in order to give them time to meet and report back to us. The motion would remain pending and on the table until we return. Is there, Jay, is there discussion on this?
Well, I have sort of a process question, and
Yeah.
color me embarrassed for seconding something and then asking you, but
Right.
if we were to vote yes on Dream's motion, is that all she wrote? We're done with the budget process? Or is it more of like a straw poll? Or is it we approve it, but then we can bring up some,
I mean, I think that the way I would look at it as it was proposed is motion was that the warrant committee vote to approve the consensus budget as presented by the town administrator. So to me, it's why I threw it out there as something to talk about. It's kind of like the all or nothing motion. Is that if the vote was go with the budget, bang, 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 we're done, basically. We have to go through all of the amendments and yay, 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 right? But I think that was the effect of that. Yeah, Nick, Jay.
can I say, the reason, there are certainly things I would like to change about this budget. If I was God or Nick or whoever, there are changes I would make. I don't think anybody in this room is happy about the fact that it's the 20th of March and we were supposed to have gone to the printer tomorrow. If we can have productive conversations to improve this budget, I'm very happy. But I'm sweating a little bit that we got to approve all the budget items, and then there are a few even non-budget items we have to approve. I sound horrible saying that. I'm not saying we just roll over and play dead because we're running late, but that's one thing that I'm thinking in the many things I'm thinking.
Okay, Kristen.
I think my concern is that last year that we voted on the budget without a lot of discussion, and I don't feel comfortable doing that again this year.
Judy was next.
I'd be willing to withdraw this, but I make a motion for a temporary table till our next meeting, which is tomorrow, Tuesday.
Is there a second?
Second.
Steve? So the motion on the table is the motion by Judy to table, seconded by Steve. Is there discussion on that motion?
Henny did have his hand
Oh, Henny has his hand up? Or, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna make that we have the options of a motion to table. We have also the option of a motion to reconsider. any previously considered item, let's say we did vote, could be re-raised for reconsideration. It's not a 2/3, simply majority vote to reconsider something, as well as the same to table. But since Judy's already made the motion, since Member Steele has already made the motion, I will refer these comments into the discussion portion of this motion. I do think that there is wisdom in what Jay has said about us being late to the printers with this. I do think that if there is something that comes out of the school committee, I'd be more than happy to make a motion to reconsider personally. But if there's not, and we save time, we just kick the can down the street to schedule another meeting to essentially do this. Why not take care of business today and then reconsider as needed?
So,
I'm
having trouble
Jay.
following. It sounds like this is discussion that you're arguing against tabling this.
I am.
Thank you. Person.
I feel like we were kind of robbed of the time to discuss this, so I don't feel
Yes.
bad about getting it like to the, like, I think it's really our job to do our due diligence.
Lori,
I agree. We're not just gonna rubber stamp it because we got it late.
right.
Yeah, I'm gonna back that, and also too, mind you, we do have a lot to consider this year, especially going into possibly a school next year with 2 overrides, which nobody's talking about. So this is a big thing that needs to be discussed.
Okay. Jareem.
So I have no issues with tabling the vote. I actually agree that, hearing the school argument and or, amendments or adjustments, is sort of an important thing and aspect of our decision making, primarily because, it's a majority of the budget. I would like for the process to go a little more smoother for us as we are looking at sort of a monstrous kind of endeavor in trying to break all of these things up and sort of, put the articles, vote on each article per se. And so, I'm with you guys. I'm just trying to make it a little easier, but I'm also trying to give us the option, put the options on the table rather than just kind of, again, rubber stamping it or, just kind of people just not doing anything because nobody else is doing anything or saying anything. So that's sort of my take.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to table the motion that Jareem made that he is in favor of tabling?
Can I make a general comment, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Well, to Kristen's point, the budget's due to us according to the bylaws in December. So, I don't really care, okay, frankly, and I also support the motion to table this. I think we have to be clear that we're looking at potentially 8 new public safety employees on the books with pensions. So,
I'm sorry,
That's-
public safety?
yes, public safety, police and fire.
8?
That's not in the recommendation.
I'm not sure how you get to 8.
I'm
They're
sorry.
all funded. They were asked for, but they're not all being recommended.
Okay, thank you.
Then I withdraw that.
I just have one question. Do we have all the final budgets for everything now?
We do.
Yeah.
So, if there's a, okay, well, I tell you what, let's get the vote done and we do housekeeping. Is a motion on the, is a motion made, seconded to table to tomorrow. Madam Clerk, would you please, we're Zoom, so we're gonna need a roll call vote, please.
I believe Emily's left, but I just want to double check. Emily?
I don't see her there.
Oh, Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
A yes means table, right?
Yes.
All right, I'm a yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jareem?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
And Dave, I assume is
I
abstention?
abstain, yes, please, thank
Okay.
you.
The motion carries.
The motion carries, it's tabled. Okay,
We have a
so,
com- What I think we should cut.
good. Steve, your question, I'm sorry, it was,
Oh, I'm good.
okay.
Yep, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so look, it's only 9 o'clock, it's early for us. If it's possible, there are some articles, early on, like Articles 1 through 9, are very, I'm not gonna say they're pro forma, they're important, but they're the articles that we often see every year, okay? That are, sort of housekeeping motions that are in the warrant every year. Some of them is because they're required, some of them are required by law to be in so often, et cetera. That if we have a little bit of time now where we're actually, it feels for once not under tremendous pressure, if we could take a little bit of time to crank these out now. Amy, do you want to join us? A lot of these, I think you could be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can I just caution you on one thing?
Absolutely.
So if you're looking at the draft of the warrant,
Yep.
and there's dollars
Yep.
attached to some of those articles, I dropped in the requests. So if you're voting on any numbers, you really shouldn't vote on them until you voted on the budget. You can, some of them I know aren't gonna change, right?
So if you
You might
could,
wanna skip some if the question, if the
Perfect.
number's up in the air.
perfect. So if you could, if you could help us with that, if there's ones that it's inadvisable for us to take action at this time,
Okay.
then we would not want to take the action at this time.
Because I think you can probably, if you vote on, like, take the audit one, for instance, I doubt anybody's gonna cut that one because it's contractual, but say it was one that you voted and then something
Right.
came to your attention and you wanted to re-vote it later, I believe that's been done in the past, correct? Glenn?
Judy?
If someone could help me, going further down the line to look at articles that didn't have numbers attached, to see if we could, 13, did we do Article 14 yet? The bylaw review committee?
Right, like we did that.
Okay, I
Right?
just
Did
didn't
we?
mark it as, I haven't got it marked, I can't remember anymore. So I'm just trying to look for things that didn't have numbers that we might be able to.
So, you know what's gonna happen, Judy, what I would look at is the draft. We have in the shared folder, we have a draft one where the article numbers have been added.
I'm not sure you did the extension,
We did
the term extension of the.
Yeah, I
Fine,
think we
okay,
talked
fine,
about it,
fine.
we
You did
listened
that,
to a,
recodification.
Okay,
But yes, you might be right about 14. I don't think you voted to extend that
so
term.
I'm just trying to
Okay.
look at things we could knock off
thank you.
in a time-sensitive.
Yep.
What about like 1 and 2?
I didn't mean to interfere
No,
with.
no, thank you. We'll take a look at that one. Maybe we can get that one done now.
Okay,
Can I just ask, it's in the OneDrive, I just wanna make sure I'm looking at the same document.
Yeah.
Is it the OneDrive that Nick shared? Because I don't see it there, so he might not have,
Giving it to everybody?
given it to me that way, he gave it to me a different way, so.
I can share if we want to hone in on an article.
Yeah, fine. And I think I think 14 with regards to bylaw review committee extension and appropriation, I think that might be, to Amy Dexter's point, is that we might not want to vote on appropriations at this point if we haven't sort of nailed down the overall budget.
so we have 14, we have
One,
What's
article,
that?
wanna start at the beginning?
I was thinking one might be a good
Right.
place to start.
oh, okay, did one have numbers?
You know, one is the loneliest number.
Well, it is, but did it have numbers?
Okay.
To do it, we may not want to do that.
Madam Clerk, would you pull up number 1, please?
Oh, yes, I'm seeing, it doesn't, we're not approving numbers, correct, I'm sorry.
Article 1, to hear upon the report of town accountant and the town offices and committees.
So that one, we don't have the town report finalized yet. So that's that annual report.
So I talked to Nick about this, is that the town, it sounds like that's in the process of being done, finalized. They expect it to be finalized and on the website sometime between the printing of the warrant and town meeting. Here it is to hear and act upon the report and others of the town meetings and subcommittees. I think that we could feel comfortable voting yes on this, is that we would authorize the town to hear it and act upon it. I think it's actually asking us to sign off on it as completed. So I think that we could feel comfortable that at such time as this report is published and made public to people, that we would approve, yes, that they could hear and act upon this report. Okay?
So I make a motion to approve Article 1?
Steve makes a motion to approve Article 1.
I second.
Seconded by Kristen. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Just checking again, Emily? O'Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jereen?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Abstention.
Abstention from me.
Keep messing
So
that up.
you're very busy over there, Madam Clerk, so when you can, would you please pull up Article number 2? This is to authorize the treasurer to collect taxes. Steve, I know. It's
I make a motion.
There you go, thank you,
I'll
Steve.
second.
It's Kristen.
Can't believe you caved like that, Steve.
Okay, so the motion is to authorize the treasurer to collect taxes. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
O'Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Dream?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Dave, abstention?
Yes, thank you.
Do we want to look at the next one?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Next one being Article 3. Amy Dexter, would you please help us? Would you please describe for us, please, what does it mean to enter into compensating balance agreements?
I do not know.
Okay.
I'm embarrassed.
Whoops.
I don't want to answer that.
I asked Nick this.
Glenn, the goat?
Yep.
Glenn probably knows.
Go ahead.
Nick said, and I'm sort of quoting, it's telling the treasurer he can open bank accounts or something. And more to the point, this is required by law that we do this every year. Some towns don't do it every year, but they still open bank accounts. But we do, and we have to by law. Do you have a better explanation, Glenn?
Sounds good to me.
And that sounds good to me. I talked about this with Nick. I printed out the statute, and that's what it is that we have to authorize them to put the funds on deposit, and under the arrangement, the earnings retained by the banking institution on the account balances compensate the bank for the services provided. So I think one of the things that's happening there is the fact that we are compensating the bank that's a kind of expenditure by us, because the interest that our town earns is our money. So I think that's probably why it's in the warrant, is that the townspeople are authorizing this expenditure. So you learn something new every day. All right, it's Lori Connolly.
It says during the fiscal year, July 1, 2022. Is that?
Yeah, it ends at the end of
it seem-
June 23, so.
Yeah, so is that right?
Is that?
So,
Might
That's
not
big-
have
that's
been updated.
no, thank you for that. I think at this point, we would consider that to be a scrivener's error. What we've been doing, this thing's huge. It's so many pages long.
No.
And the first thing that happens is that we take last year's and change all the 2s to 3s, 3s to 4s, 4s to 5, and so on, right? And so we just missed that one. So let's go with, that will be amended. So for purposes of our vote, we're voting for the, for the FY '24, okay? So thank you for pointing that out. Is there a motion on the table?
And it will be amended in the comments or amended
Yeah.
by whoever, the select board to amend that to reflect properly on the printed warrant.
Yes, it will be, the article will
Okay,
be
thank you.
amended to reflect the correct
Okay,
language. Here, it's a typo.
okay.
It's a typo, okay? So thank you for that, because that's what this is all about.
So I make a motion to approve Article 3.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kristen. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes. O'Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori? Yes. Allison?
Yes.
Jareen?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay Funling?
Yes.
And Dave abstention?
Yes, please, thank you. Does this feel good?
Carries.
Amazing.
This is just the best ever.
So we haven't done
Okay, so then we have a lot that we have.
That's from the
Is that?
I think the
CMRPC
next one is Article 9, that's not, doesn't have money involved.
committee that does it.
You know, trying to.
So, it's a question, like, I talked with Nick about audit appropriation, which is 5, or what's 4 at? Can we,
That's capital.
we
Capital.
can't do that one.
Right.
The audit appropriation of 5, he says, is the actual cost. Do we want, see, look at Jay.
Yeah, that one probably will not change.
That is,
Shouldn't change.
so, if this involves like, audits and insurance, and Jay's nodding his head, I'd feel comfortable going with that one. Lori?
Can I just ask for the OPEB valuation? Like why is that in the audit?
Sure. Well,
No, go ahead.
Okay, set your clock.
I don't know why it's in the audit, so you can answer that part.
Just where we track it because it's required for the audit.
So does the OPEB valuation happen every year?
Every 2 years. That's why you see it go down
Oh,
to 0, then up,
That,
down to
yep,
0,
okay,
then
got
up.
it. Okay, thank you.
Do we feel comfortable with this one? Okay, I think the answer, all right, so is there a motion?
Motion to approve Article 5.
Steve?
Second.
Amanda beat you to it, Kristen.
She's forgiven.
Started to take case.
Vote, please.
O'Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes. Sorry.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori? Yes. Allison?
Yes.
Jareen?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
This is probably not going to change,
No.
right?
Well, 7.
It is what it is, right? It's contractual.
I wouldn't, I don't think we vote on it.
No?
Just because he could change something, potentially.
6, please.
6,
Thank you.
sorry. Collective bargaining, money?
Was that the wage set aside?
Yeah.
Should we at least, you're the chair.
I think we need some sorry, Mr. Chair, some clarification that the recommended amount will have all bargaining contracts been finished?
What do you think about this one?
So this one's the wage set aside for the union employees. That's our estimate. I don't think through the balancing process that you would cut that, because that's a calculation that we have. It's an estimate, but it's not like something you would decide to fund or not fund, because it's will be a contractual obligation.
Which is July 1st, the next contract.
Well, so this is the tricky part. The contract expired June 30th of '22. So the union employees, all but the library settled, they've gotten their retro, they're up to date. All of the departmental budgets that were submitted are at the wages that were in effect on June 30th. So this wage
Of
set
last year.
aside, yes, this wage set aside is putting aside money to account for whatever their wage adjustments would be for for fiscal '23, fiscal '24, but because we're 2 years behind, we're gonna also owe them retro, so it's 3 times. So if we don't settle all of these contracts by June 30th, the wage set aside we currently have in '23 cannot be rolled over. We can't carry wages forward if there are not signed contracts, so that will fall to the calculation of free cash. Therefore, this is 3 times. If something happens where we settle all of those contracts before town meeting, we're still gonna need some of this, but we won't need that 1 year set aside for the retro for this year. So it's kind of confusing. I think you could vote it, and if something changes, you could revise your vote. But I don't think through the work you're gonna do tomorrow night to determine how to balance the budget that this committee's comfortable with, I don't believe this should be an area that you should reduce at this point of time.
I talked to Nick about this today, and it's basically, it's like what Amy's saying, it's their best guess.
Yes.
It's their best guess at what they're gonna need to have on hand for when they finalize all these contracts.
And this is very unusual that we'd be this far behind, but with turnover, again,
Steve?
I guess that was my question. How do we get to this place?
well,
They have to
the town
negotiate the
administrator, the finance director left before year end, before the contracts were settled. Ideally, they would have been settled by June 30th of '22, and we would have known what they were gonna be. Combine that with the current climate and us trying what the unions are asking for, what the town's trying to negotiate, that, they just haven't come into
So you
agreement.
want us to sign off on a blank check, essentially?
It's not a blank
No,
check, no.
1.3.
Yeah, that's happened to my union.
It's an estimate.
That
We
I
need
don't
to
think a huge
protect the town to have
retro.
money
It's
to
very
pay a
minimal.
contractual obligation. This is the town leader's estimate of what that possibly could be.
Thank
Can
you.
be revised later if more additional information is obtained.
Thank you.
But, you know, it's not a blank check really, because it's up to this amount.
Yeah, okay. Not to exceed.
That doesn't mean they get that.
It doesn't mean they get it, but we're authorizing up to this amount that is in the town administrator's estimation, like the best guess or the working number that he's working with for this. And I see the point, is that because these are contractual obligations, it just would not be a place where we would want to take the big red pen.
And the theory behind the recommendation being 950,000 from the levy and 350 from free cash is the 350 represents the estimate for the retro for '23. And we feel that that will be replenished if they're not, like, if they're settled this year, we'll use the money that's this year. If they're not, that will fall to the free cash and we'll replenish what we're taking out of it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That looks
That's
like
where
it-
those two numbers came from.
Did that answer your question, Judy? You had your hand up.
Yes, it was, that basically the fallback is, even if they get X amount of dollars, contracts aren't settled, the unused money must go back to free cash.
Yeah, but
Until the next budget.
if they
Can we
all
try
sign
to-
on June 30th, I can carry forward the set aside from '23 to '24. But if they are not signed, the Department of Revenue and the auditors will not allow me to carry that forward. So
So it
it's
has
a
to go
timing
back.
of it.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Nick and I discussed if there was a way around reducing the '23 appropriation, but there isn't, because there's still the possibility that they might settle, so we need the money this year in case that happens, because we'll have so much time to pay them what we owe them for the last 7-8 months that they've worked at a lower rate. So as of right now, they haven't gotten any COLA adjustment. Some of the members may have gotten as if they're early in their time here in the union, their steps. So they might have gotten
Their
that
step
increase, but
increases.
not any kind of cost of living adjustment.
Judy, go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. There was a point that I think I heard on this present, similar subject. In the town contracts, you don't separate out COLA from just contractual wage increases. You sort of lump them together.
Well, yeah, we don't,
Would you
I
be
call
able
it a
to answer
COLA,
that?
but in the agreement, it will say the wages will increase by X% on this date. It doesn't say it's cost of living for inflation, it doesn't say it's performance, it's not, it's.
So, to be clear, and just, I guess for information purposes, our town does not give our employees a cost of living adjustment that, from contracts that I'm familiar with, is always a separate issue.
It's all
COLA.
negotiated in one contract of 1% increase, it's not broken out.
So, just a remark, if I don't know if I can make a remark, but, COLA adjustments are based on inflation. And so, my opinion is, whoa. No, it's
I didn't
COLA.
catch the last part.
It's kind of like COLA adjusters.
I think these are union negotiations we're
union
getting into,
yeah,
which kind of
so-
is a little off.
It is off.
Yeah, I mean,
So that could be an open meeting problem.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
It might,
Well-
is it?
Oh, did I
I
mention?
mean,
I
no,
think it's
because
all-
we didn't talk about, like, I can't tell you how this number came up. I can just tell you the theory behind why it's there.
Okay, thank you.
We can't, Judy's question of COLA, like, we
I
just
don't wanna
don't do it
pursue
that
it
way.
if
We
it's
negotiate with the unions of what the
Yeah, we're
wage
not sure, so I'm gonna
adjustments- yeah. It's not
retract
necessarily
my
inflation.
question. May I do that,
Sure.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
And we'll just stick with the article?
Yeah,
And maybe some other day I might
That would be a question for
get
Mr.
some kind of
Milano, 'cause
permission
I
from
don't
the
engage
town
in the
administrator
negotiations.
to talk about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amanda,
I move that we approve Article 6.
the motion to move, seconded by Steve Geister. Madam Clerk, please conduct a roll call vote.
O'Henny?
Yes,
O'Henny?
sorry.
Seem to be up there now.
I'll try again. JJ?
Yes.
We lost him.
Yes. Have you heard
JJ?
me? Yes. Did you hear me?
Now we can, thank you. Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Dream?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
And let me just try again, O'Henny?
Yes.
Motion carries. Dave's-
Thank you.
We can't vote on it, right, 'cause-
And when you can, if you could scroll down to Article 7, let's see, that's,
Yeah, 'cause that's
The
not gonna change.
retirement?
So Article 7 is employee benefits, which includes the medical insurance costs. So I would recommend you wait
Sure.
until you decide what's in the supplemental ask,
okay.
because that's not
Right.
reflected in this number.
Okay, yes, yes. What about 8, unemployment,
That one should be fine.
right? Vote to appropriate to reimburse Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Unemployment Assistance or benefits paid for former employees of the town. Laura, you have a question?
I do. Amy, it was 10,000 in '22 and now it's 80,000? What's the,
10,000
was,
extremely unusual. Can't really tell you why. It must have had something to do with COVID. Nobody in Milton, at least on the town side, and I don't think anyone on the school was laid off because of COVID. We went to like some work from home hybrid type stuff, but that is extremely low. In the narrative for this budget, I believe I show the last 10 years of expenses, and we're kind of, again, looking at an average, how it's trending. The last several years, this was at 100,000, before 2023. I can't remember what it was for 2022, but this is one area that's a good, candidate for a reserve fund transfer if it comes in higher than's budgeted, it's unexpected, unanticipated, especially whereas we're kind of going by the trend.
thank you.
So it looks like it's that we're authorizing 80, to have 80,000 available in order to reimburse the state for claims that have not been made yet.
Correct, so if claims that we pay, they pay out and we reimburse them.
Right, so it looks like they're asking for level funding of
Yes.
the 80,000. Is there a motion?
Motion to vote on Article 8.
Steve G makes it,
A second.
Kristen seconds it. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
O'Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Dream?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And when you can, please, we'll go to 9. So this is, what this is what they have to do is there's a chart that needs to go into the warrant to identify the level department, municipal division, and personnel code. What is it? It's our, who we employ. And it looks like we're required to do it, required to post it, and this is the current updated list for going into FY '24.
Yeah, so these are approved positions that have been approved by the Personnel Board, which is a separate appointed board, that are in what we call a personnel plan, not necessarily, they are not all necessarily funded. So for example, you might look at police and there might be a position or two that's been approved but has never gotten to the point where it was funded. So that's a list of everything that's approved. Doesn't include any town employees. And then at the end, you have non-classified, I think it's called, or unclassified. And that's more like the management team. All of these under unclassified are people like myself. I have an individual contract, as opposed to I'm not part of a union because of my job duties. I can't be. And then also there's positions in here called Chapter 13, which is all of the positions that don't fall into a union, don't fall into an individual contract. They're just kind of outside that scope. So at the bottom of this, you're not only approving all these, the list of positions, you're not saying, yes, we agree these positions, because that's done by the personnel board. You're voting that these are all the positions, and then these dollars here are similar to the wage set aside that we had in the earlier article. The only difference is these people have all received 22 for the most part, so there's no retro. That's why it's, I believe that's true. Some of them have, there might be a few of the contractual people that haven't settled yet for 23.
Kristen?
Would that number be expected to change then if there are some contractual people who haven't settled?
No, because well, it could, similar
It's
to
in
the
the-
other
it's in
one,
the-
that maybe it would be reduced. I'm trying to think if that will be affected. That won't be affected either by you balancing the operating budget, because anything new that we might have asked for 24 would have been put in at what we think we would hire that person at, and if it comes in higher, we would just figure out how to absorb it. So I don't think if you said, yeah, we want to fund a police officer, this wouldn't really change. We would just figure that out.
Lori Connell, you had a question?
I did, and this seems like something we could vote on, but I guess my question is, should somebody be double checking against who Paige potentially has this list that got put in to make sure that we have it correct in the article? Or is that overkill? Seems like a,
I don't know the answer.
I mean,
It's normally done.
do you know what I mean? Like, we could have missed a position, and then what does that do if we vote on it and we're missing a position?
It doesn't eliminate the position, because that would have to be a vote by the personnel board. So in theory, and I can't say what was done or not, it's submitted by the personnel board. So in theory,
It's,
maybe you could check with the chair of the personnel board to make sure that
At this stage,
it
this is.
should be okay.
trying to be
This is
accurate.
what I would say. It's on them. This is what they're asking for. We approve it or we don't approve it. If we approve it and they're wrong, they can come and explain to us the mistake later and ask us for more money.
I don't think the money will change.
We don't think-
There could potentially be a mistake somewhere in the table.
For the union
It's not gonna
Yeah.
change the scheme of things, because it's what the personnel. So basically, we take the table, Paige will take the table from the year before, look at everything that the personnel board newly approved or changed, and insert it into the table. But I didn't do anything but the numbers on this one.
So it has no, I'm sorry, has no bearing on contracts being approved. This is just, we have this, we have that, we have the other thing.
Yeah, it seems to me like the first half is just kind of like public notice. It's just putting
Yeah.
the public on notice of what are the approved positions. Then the second part is seeking for the authorization of the funds, pertinent to each of the named individuals. I mean, again, at this point in the game, is that I just think we just have to go with the due diligence has been.
This is the, this is for any and all contracts that haven't been settled.
Except for union contracts.
So this is non-union,
Non-union employees.
but if I may,
So you could have a non-union employee that's not covered by an individual contract. So there's certain admin positions, such as those two in the select board, that are not part of a union because they're privy to information that they can't be, because it's confidential in nature, or they might know things that are being done on the town side as far as negotiations, so they're not part of a union, but they're admin positions that are just covered by normal employment laws. Whereas I have a 3-year contract that says, I have a job through such and such a date, if they let me go, I get, that kind of thing. Those are usually the department heads, although to make it more complicated, some department heads are in a union. Depends what your position is. I can't be in a union because of my position and because of the level of my position. Most finance directors have an individual contract.
So and only because I did the subcommittee on Council on Aging, the director is in the
The managers union.
managers union, which encompasses other department heads, from what I believe.
Yes.
It's not a singular
Correct.
union. And so, this 95,000 is for these types of positions that haven't settled their contract?
Does not include, for instance, the Council on Aging director in the number. Her-
Okay, in the number 95,000,
Right,
this is
her
for
wage
everyone
adjustment
that is
is
not in a union.
Right, although,
Although,
all right, I'm gonna confuse you more because her position's listed there, but she's not in the dollars because she's in that other one.
there's
I'm
where I
not
was
sure
going. You're
why they're
good.
separate.
It would have been more helpful to kind of, well,
I'm
to
not
understand.
sure why they're separate, to
Okay.
be honest with you,
Yeah,
but,
yeah, got it.
so it is confusing.
Well, somewhat is.
I think, again, this is one that's, you're not gonna change in the balancing. But in the event more information comes forward, you could potentially just revote it if the need arises.
Go, Jay.
We've got a list of numbers. They're all precise to the dollar, and they add up to 95,000.
Yeah, cause
Wow.
I round up and down. I'd have to look at my calculation.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I probably plugged a couple dollars to make it even because it's not an exact science, but I have a
Okay.
spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then the money, excuse me, would go back to free cash if, in fact, you didn't need to use this 95,000.
We'll need some of it, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I say that. Okay, thank you.
I sense a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
Madam
I'm just making
Clerk,
things
would you-
more complicated.
Roll call vote.
How you doing, us?
Oh, Henny,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Steve Geister,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Dream,
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Say yes.
No, I don't think you were asked.
Judy?
Okay, so I'm just gonna have a chat. If we just do, it's 20 minutes to 10. And I'm just trying to feel out where we're at. If we try and pound out one more article, and we
Which
think
one?
about maybe,
Past our bedtime.
yeah.
Which,
I'm not making a
As long
motion
as-
or anything, I'm just, you know,
what was the article?
I don't know, pick one. 14, let's go to 14.
Go to 10.
Well, that's
Oh, we can't do 10.
a couple, like, yeah, it was like 12 and 13, 10 and 11. No, public safety is like,
Budget at 12. I think 12 is the next one that's not
12 and 13.
oriented.
Bylaws?
Bylaws.
We
It's
did
actually
13,
the
we voted on
recodification.
13.
Didn't
We voted on
are
12.
renumbering them?
Yeah, we did those two. If Madam Secretary could check
I
my
think we
notes.
did,
on the
right?
date we
Yeah, we
have.
did the other
Renumbering,
night.
yes.
Yep.
Okay, we
Oh,
did,
that's right. Yep.
right? We did 12.
14.
So that's an appropriation.
Sharp tonight.
So we're starting,
Play that number.
you know, like,
Get it in your numbers.
Oh, listen,
you know, community preservation funds, like, we're having tomorrow a community preservation committee projects report. And then I'm just flying through appropriation. We're gonna be addressing Kidder Library later.
Can we do?
You know, what the heck? Why don't we reopen Guile Road?
Why don't we just look at 14?
Right, the only other, you know, one of the ones that,
nobody, I did not laugh.
The water and sewer stuff?
That information's not done yet.
yeah, that's not done. And then there was capital improvement, like we had that presentation by Mr. Wells and Nick. That's one we could do. That's one we could entertain. But
I think that might be part of the budget negotiation.
Okay.
Might or might not be
Fine.
part of the budget horse trading.
I could
Fine.
recommend a couple.
yes,
If
please.
you wanted to jump ahead.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable, you could do, hold on, the debt authorizations that are related to DPW work, so they are, so it's part of the capital, but it's not using any free cash. And they're kind of boilerplate ones, they're number 22, 23, and 24.
Is Blue Hills presenting to us this year?
I did not ask for Blue Hills to come in.
So could we vote on them if we just?
So that number might change a little bit, like thousands, not hundreds of thousands. So I just don't.
In the next couple days?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
yes. I've gotten information I haven't reflected
Okay.
in the balancing or in this article yet. So if you vote on this number, I know it's gonna change a little bit, not a lot.
Well, we want to vote, I think, on the best possible number that we would have for
Yeah.
them. And I don't anticipate, it's part of the budget, and it looks like that's a pretty straightforward discussion for the Blue Hills. So I think we should just hold off on that until we have it. Madam Clerk, could you pull up 22, please?
My favorite number
Lori.
is being.
I just want to, I don't remember voting on 9. I just want to double check with Karen.
What was 9? I'm sorry, I'm back to
Chapter
22.
13 wage set aside, right?
Didn't we just do that?
We did,
Yeah,
but
we
I
should-
don't,
No, hold on,
She asked Lori's
it's
name.
late enough that,
I don't think she asked Lori's name.
I didn't say your name?
I don't think so.
I don't
Oh.
think so. I'm like, I don't think I voted.
No, you're right.
What do we do in that case?
vote no.
So, I'm sorry.
You get a vote no.
Well, I just want to make it sure.
Let's keep track of this stuff.
I wrote yes, but I could have just been going quickly and skipped you, so I apologize.
It's
if I
yes,
did.
no, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that,
And I do just want to note that Emily is back, and I've just, I'm not sure when she
Okay.
got back, but she's back.
all right, thank you for that.
And now we're looking at, I'm sorry, 22?
Yes, please.
sorry about that.
That's okay.
Like page 33.
Oh, that's a lot of money for, just winging one off the,
So this is,
Chapter 90 roadways, debt authorization.
right,
Jay's presented this to us.
So it's a grant program for roadway improvements. We have to have a debt authorization in the event we spend before we get the reimbursement. We might have to short-term borrow the money at year end. We don't usually, we would never take out a bond for the 626. It's just more to cover us if we need short-term borrowing.
What, what's the likely, what's the likelihood of this reimbursement? Strong?
100%.
Thank you.
Right, is this the one, it's my recollection that we're allowed to borrow up to a certain amount, and so what we do is we vote to approve the borrowing the maximum that we can, subject to a 100% reimbursement.
Correct.
Okay, so I think that's where this number, my recollection is that's where this number comes from, is that we are allowed to borrow up to a certain amount for 100% reimbursement, so we authorize them to borrow the max.
And then any road work above and beyond that would be in the other capital article. This is all that Milton's afforded for 24 for under Chapter 90 program.
Okay.
That's why the number's a weird amount.
So I move to vote for Article 22.
Second.
It's, Stephen Geiser made the motion and Amanda seconded it.
Okay. Emily?
Yes.
O'Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jareem?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I don't know, if there's an extra dollar sign in here, I don't know if that needs to be taken out, or who takes that out, or.
Oh, yeah.
It definitely,
I have the master here, so
That means they can double it.
thank you.
That's right.
this is not an extra one.
Exactly.
Judy?
I would like to look at anyone that really thinks maybe an early night might be a really good idea. Then I'll jump at once, please.
What,
Please, the table can't hold us.
Are there 2 more?
yeah, I think we
Yeah.
could crank out 23 and 24.
I actually really do need to.
Okay, Judy, if that's okay, if you have to go, we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you.
And it's
very
one
much.
of the reasons why we have so many people on the warrant committee. And
Okay,
if people have to go, it is late, we have a quorum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, it's fine, it's fine. You know, look, there are times when we need everybody here, right? There are times when we need everybody here, and there's times when we don't need everybody here. So thank you for giving us what you can tonight.
Thank you.
We do appreciate it, thank you. Okay, 23. To see what sum the town will appropriate for rehabilitation, replacement, enhancement of the water system.
So this is a 0% loan program through the MWRA, 10-year loan program. This would have been voted by the Capital Improvement Planning Committee as part of their recommendation, and it's just to do infrastructure work for the water system.
And this is the same thing, it's that we're allowed to borrow up to a certain amount.
So this one's not a grant.
Yep,
So this will be a cost to the town
yep.
of $596,700, no interest. So it's a good program in that the impact on the operating budget is $60,000 a year, but it's work we have to keep up with.
Okay.
Did someone come and talk to us about this, or am I remembering something with the tubing, the piping, and somebody talking about the?
Yeah,
Okay,
she
am
came
I?
to visit us, yes.
That was,
Okay.
that was different. That was this, when Marina came for the
Okay.
sewer
Oh,
line.
this is
Right.
one,
That was
okay.
another program that we voted in the fall,
Okay.
or in December.
Great.
Tom?
Mr. JK, does anybody remember if they said they use all of this money every year? They do, don't they?
They do. Sometimes they'll wait, so say they say that, might not make sense to do 596, he might take a couple of the authorizations and borrow them and sign one contract for a bigger amount. I'm trying to plan that better with the DPWs so that, cause capital committee plans this at 596, 7's gonna be borrowed next year, so. There is a little bit of that going on. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense to sign a contract for that amount and he'll wait, so,
No, I appreciate it, thank you.
but that's the maximum we can borrow under this program.
And Chase manages that?
Yeah.
So I move to vote for Article 23.
Steve G moves to vote.
Second.
Tom seconds. Madam Clerk, roll call vote, please. Thank you.
Emily,
Yes.
O'Henny, O'Henny,
We lost him. They're not up there now.
I don't see anybody.
Yeah.
JJ,
Usually it's on the side.
Yes.
Steve Geister,
Yes.
Can you share the screen?
Kristen,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Dream,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Steve Rhines.
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
and we'll try O'Henny again. O'Henny?
We lost him.
Yeah, he looks like he's here, but maybe he stepped away.
We have a quorum,
The motion
so
carries.
there you go. Thanks.
We're going to 24.
24, please. Yes, thank you. This is to appropriate to provide rehabilitation, replacement, enhancement of the stormwater system. It's recommended the sum of $350,000 be appropriated for financing the replacement and rehabilitation thereof.
So this would be a regular bond issue at whatever the interest rate is at the time when we borrow the money. But again, that's infrastructure work.
Any questions? Steve?
Yeah, just what's the term of that borrowing of 350,000?
I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's, I'm gonna say it might be 20 years, 15 or 20, somewhere around
Is
there.
that what we typically do?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I move to vote for Article 24.
Steve G moves to vote. Amanda seconds.
Emily? Emily?
Yes. Yes, sorry about that.
Okay. O'Henny?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Dream?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. You know, at the end, there's also 45 and 46. 45 is to accept easements.
There's also 3 other easy money, well, what I would think are straightforward. Number 36,
36,
which is debt service, I believe.
sounds good. 36.
39, which is the appropriation to the OPEB trust of $100,000. That's a new policy that was just adopted that said we were gonna do that. And number 40, which is the reserve fund.
All right, let's start with 36, please. Here it is. To see what sum the town will appropriate for interest and maturing debt. It is recommended, can we,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, thank
Sorry.
you. Yep.
Somewhere else right now.
That's my concern. I think it might be missing one. So, can I just explain the recommendation?
Absolutely,
Okay.
please.
So this article looks a little bit different than if you compare it to warrants of previous years. And the difference is the fire station building project. I separated that out on a separate line because that's going to be financed with the special purpose debt stabilization fund. So if you read the recommendation to meet the said appropriation, 250,000 will come from funds released from the overlay reserve. That's standard in this language in this article. 4,303,062 from the tax levy, and 407,810 to be transferred from the special purpose debt stabilization fund. We chose to, for full transparency, to show it this way, rather than just pay for that debt service directly out of that fund. We should transfer it in. So this may require a 2/3 vote at town meeting. I'm not sure, but probably, right? But that's why it looks a little different. We're gonna track the fire station separately, show what that is, and transfer the money from that fund over. So this really, the 407 doesn't have a direct impact on the operating budget because it's offset in revenue. And we're short-term borrowing that. We worked that out with our financial advisors so that this fund could support the debt service on it. That's why you're only seeing interest and no principal in this table. The maturing debt is the principal on the other town issued bonds.
How many years is that?
The fire station?
Yeah, the fire station. How
Well,
many-
those are bans, so they're short-term notes, but when we eventually bond that project out, I think we're looking at 25 or 30 years.
Any questions? Amanda?
Move that we vote on Article 36.
It's a motion by Amanda.
Second.
Second by Steve G. Madam Clerk, please. Thank you.
Emily?
Yes.
O'Henny? O'Henny? Come back.
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Steve Geister?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Allison?
Yes.
Jareen?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Steve Rhines?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Motion carries. And next we're going to,
37.
Can we do 36?
That looks blank.
39, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, 39.
I have a 10-minute presentation about OPEB funding, if you'd like to hear it.
I'm actually interested.
We'll talk later.
All right, so, why 100,000?
So, Nick recently put forward to select board, a financial policy regarding the funding of the OPEB trust, and that's the other post-employment benefit, liability related to the medical insurance for retirees. And in that policy, it says that when the pension's fully funded, a certain approximately so much will go to it, but I think it says in the next 3 years, 100,000 a year. I think it was just to put something towards it.
Jay's nodding his head.
That's what Nick proposed, and that's what,
In the select board approved.
we want to show we're putting something in here. We're not just ignoring it.
That's an important one to the bond agencies. They always ask, even if it's not a lot of money. Like I think somebody mentioned tonight that sometimes it's all over the place, like, well, stabilization, but also this, it's usually if we have free cash that we're not appropriating somewhere else, we'll put it here, or we'll put it to stabilization funds. And that's mainly because we want to show some effort that we're recognizing there's a liability, even though 100,000 is not going to make a big dent. It goes a long way to show that we know that that's looming.
Okay, I move to vote on Article 39.
Steve G votes, moves to vote. Second. Tom? Vote, please.
Emily,
Yes.
Bohanny,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Steve Geister,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Dream,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Steve Rhines,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can we vote on?
You can do
40.
40 if you're comfortable with,
I
that's
don't think
pretty
so.
standard, the
Because
250.
isn't that part of the state, or is that different than the stabilization?
I'd rather wait.
I agree.
41?
That looks familiar.
That's from Chase.
Oh, but that's put money in.
Yeah, did we already do 41?
Didn't we vote on that?
Did we vote on?
So Chase might have come in and
He did.
explained this one.
We absolutely discussed it. Should we go to revolving funds, number 42?
I don't
So-
think the numbers here will change, it's just whether or not the
This is the
concept.
DPW we voted on with the JPEG night.
Yeah.
Abandoned property JPEG.
So we voted on this one? On Article 41? All right.
I don't think it had a number at the time. It says DPW.
Okay, so we voted on that one. That's 41 was yes. 42.
So the only thing with this one is I haven't checked the table yet.
Okay, so we should pass.
And last year it was missing one of them. So I think it was added, but I would like the opportunity to just review that one.
Okay, thank you.
This one, 43, is pretty straightforward. I can explain that if Nick hasn't.
Didn't we vote on that?
We did it.
We already did,
Yeah.
we did.
This is the access.
Yeah.
Okay, so 43 was a yes. Did we do 44 is the appropriation, it looks like.
So if you haven't voted that one yet, I'd like to check the number.
Okay, so we should hold. Thank you. 45, to accept easements. Pretty standard. They should have the authority to accept easements. Any questions about that?
Make a motion to approve.
Kristen makes a motion to
Second.
approve. Seconded by Amanda. Allison, sorry. The A names, it's the A names.
Warrant 45, correct?
45, yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Bohanny,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Steve Geister,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Dream,
Yes?
Amanda,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Steve Rhines,
Yes.
Jay.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And finally, we might as well cruise on down to 46.
Did we vote on that? already?
It looks, I have to read it. Wait,
Yeah, that's the unclaimed money.
is that unclaimed money?
Yeah.
You did unclaimed money.
Oh,
You
that's
have
so
voted.
done. That is so done.
Yeah. That's it.
Strong work. So it's a little over an hour, but I think that that's an hour in the bank.
Yep.
I mean, I think we're glad that we got this done and out of the way, so that we can focus on, so we can come back and, Lori, you're recognized.
Thank you. Amy, I'm wondering if you can talk to us about Article 44, which is the appropriation for PEG Access Enterprise Fund.
Yeah, so basically, we have agreements with the cable companies, RCN and Comcast, and they pay us a percentage of their revenue in Milton, and then we have to pay a percentage of what they pay us to Milton Access TV.
Okay.
So the reason this appropriation is what we estimate that payment will be. So I have to do a couple things. I have to figure out what that number should be, and then I have to speak with Milton Access TV representatives to make sure that's in line with their operating budget and their needs. So I didn't calculate that 600,000 number, so I wanna make sure I do my due diligence and speak to Shane or whoever the appropriate person there is to make sure it's enough.
Perfect, thank you.
But it relates to that other one. It's just those revenues coming in and then we,
But it's all for Milton Access.
most of it. Yeah, that amount is, yes. And we pay them quarterly when we get the checks in from the cable company. We then calculate what we owe them per the PEG access agreements.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's great. We're closing in on tonight. I'm thinking in an abundance of caution, what do you think? How's people's Saturday looking? I made the mistake once of that Friday warrant committee meeting, this apparently is like not done. If we did Friday, we could use Zoom. I was trying to get the sense of people, like, if we need like an escape plan for time, would we just want to commit possibly to like an all-day Saturday, a Zoom on Saturday, and a day on, a Zoom on Friday, Saturday day, like what's, because I think that we have to have this done this week, right? We may have it done tomorrow and Wednesday, but if we don't, then we're gonna need, to make a final stand somewhere. What are people doing these days?
If possible, if Saturday's an option, I'd like it to be in person, or at least hybrid or whatever.
Friday for me is not
Okay.
an option.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get through the whole school budget in 2 hours tomorrow. We may need another day beyond that just to get through, because it's a lot to get through. I mean, we've met a couple times already, but
You might have to.
So it's sort of like the, it's 9 AM as like, like if need be, we maybe do a posting for 9 AM on Saturday with a Zoom option, but preferably in person, because we might really need to, hammer that out.
we're getting here.
I think we would start with here. Yeah, 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 yeah.
May I ask a
Judy.
question? So if we did a Saturday, what you're describing as an all-day, is there, would it be reasonable to have a break if
Sure.
it's too long?
Sure.
And how would we go about that, Mr. Chair?
We'd just do it. We would just, like, if we got to a point where we need to take a break, we'd take a break.
And then they just put us on, we put the town on hold for a few
Yeah,
minutes?
sure, and, probably
Oh, okay.
Intermission.
Yeah.
Intermission,
Almost sing.
we have an intermission.
right,
Right.
who's bringing the brownies?
Well,
Who's
and then we'll
bringing the
get- right.
cookies?
And
Come
pizza.
on,
And
and the
so-
pizza.
If we get to the point where we're actually gonna be doing the Saturday thing, we'll know, like, on Thursday and Friday, like, what it's gonna be, so we'll come up with a plan.
Thank you.
Like, I'm likely to show up with a box of Joe, right? I mean, right? Like, if it were, and so anyways, I just wanted to get a feel for people of, like, what worked out better. And so, we'll do that all what we'll do is we'll come and we'll lock ourselves in, and when we have a recommendation, white smoke will come out from the chimney.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
Nope. Motion to adjourn.
Is it
Second.
seconded? Is there any opposition? The motion carries, thank you.
Can I just offer one thing? I noticed a lot of the articles don't have comments yet.
Yes.
So in the past, if people, I know at some point you'll probably assign comments to people on the committee if you need my help or department heads' help, just reach out to Nick or I. Because in the past, we have written some comments, or a lot of them you can just take from last year and tweak. So if you need any help with that at all, just
So
let us
thank you.
know,
Yeah,
okay?
My plan right now, I blocked off a lot of my time to do this.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna be very involved in writing the comments. Some of the major ones, I've asked for help from the committee members to give me bullet points for me to draft some of the big ones.
Yeah.
So if it's okay, like, I might even see if it's okay someday for me to bring a laptop to town hall and set up somewhere, just so that I'm
Yep.
close in space, if that works.
I'm sure that's fine, and, like, I know, like, in the past, I've written the one for the capital committee, because
Sure.
you guys didn't, you know, I can say how much was requested and all that, so
Plan
I,
on doing that?
yeah, and then I'll just send a draft to you, and you can tweak it as you want, make it your own, but it, I find it's easier sometimes if somebody gives me something to start
Sure.
with, so.
And if you wanna just throw, because I have access to the draft warrant in the
Yep.
OneDrive.
Yep.
So if you just wanna throw it in there.
Just, okay, and tell,
I would say
yep.
just do it, because I'm gonna start getting in there.
It's probably not updated unless I updated it.
The
I forgot.
OneDrive he's talking about, the
Which I might
Do we have it?
because I was rushing to put that together before I went away. So, all right, but just
Yeah.
anything you guys need help with
Thank you.
from
Those are all
Nick or I, we're used to, well, I don't wanna speak for him, but I'm used to, in the past, like, I always kinda take ownership of the tables, cause it's just
Please do.
easier, and I've done everything, but the numbers are not gonna jive with Nick's recommendation or the final recommendation, so at this point, I just wait till you guys tell me your balance, and then I can
Yes.
easily go in and update everything, but the prior year numbers should be all set.
Right. It's
Okay.
super helpful, it's super helpful, and I'm in there and I'm looking and I can see when things are updated and having those numbers and it's beautiful, it's wonderful.
And I'm taking care of, organizing all the tables. I'm gathering all that data from the different department heads, so we'll just be able to send that to you, and then someone, I think we just send it to the printer and they somehow take it from Excel and put it in.
Thank you.
So that, don't think that's just being ignored. Same with the front tables. I already have it in the workbook, I'm just not gonna transfer it over until we know we're done.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's not as bad as it looks.
That looks
It's in
awesome.
better shape than it appears. So don't worry about that, we're all hands on deck. Once we have the final numbers, we're just,
Plenty of other
that's
things to worry
priority.
about.
No other thing.
Thank you.
Okay.
When do our comments have to be in?
If you guys can get me your comment, like, as soon as possible, I'm gonna start writing that.
It's easy to resend it, just have to find.
Yeah.
I got the land swap one, I get inputs from everybody, I'm kinda putting it together.
Yeah, just if you can, 'cause, like, I'm just gonna, like, I have blocked off
Yeah.
my
And then
time.
send them over.
So I'm self-employed, so I've been able to, like, big blocks of time just to get this done.
And just let us know when you wanna set up shop here, we can put you upstairs, there's a cube, we can put you in the Baker conference room, wherever
Right.
you wanna go, I'll just tell Nick that you might be reaching out to him on
Perfect.
that.
That's a good job you and Tom did.
And, I can be
That was a
here,
good job you and Tom
you know,
write up.
anytime you meet this
I
week,
read it this morning and I'm
can't be
just
here
kinda-
probably on Saturday
I try
though,
to
but
pare it down a little bit, but maybe I just set it the way
not
it
as much
is.
to make your life.
and
Your
Chris-
meeting
Take out
longer,
any
but
salient points.
No, I get a couple I wanna add in.
There you go.
Nick can't be here
I'm more worried about the school.
Oh, my God.
tomorrow.